Welcome to the Condor DM show. It's casual talk night, which is something akin to the off script night, right? The exception was last off script. I had to bring a few more notes with me than I planned, which was usually just supposed to be just open to you guys. But I knew I was going to need notes for that to go anywhere, and I think I was right. Tonight, I have a few, of course, notes. The way I wrote some things out, it won't be much because I just have a lot of personal opinions and stuff like that to talk about this one. I think it's good and interesting in many ways. But yeah. Okay, welcome to the Condor DM show. It's going to be a good night. I think I've been inspiring people. I noticed I have a good connection with my audience. I notice some other people now trying to do a more personal chat on their stream, connect with people a little bit more, be nicer, get to know them. And I noticed before I've been doing that, their streams they talk to each other, they somewhat pay attention to chat, but it was sort of like blow you off. Who cares? We talk to each other. Now it's like, okay, now the people matter. Hey, what's up? Oh, Craig. What's up, Craig? Here's some good news, my friend. I found a guy who's going to run Fudge for me. So I'm going to do the next lineup of games. One of them is going to be Fudge. He's already been giving me the information I need to sort of start writing things out, but he wants to sit down and run it with me, sort of show me how the game mastering goes, good tips and all that stuff for game mastering, all the stuff I need for the normal rundown. And I'm going to go through it, do the character creation, the whole thing, and I can cover Fudge. I figured, I was looking forward to telling you about that. The other thing I'll ask you, and I'll ask Black Rose and Drift when he gets around, are you guys cool with me releasing that Horde Wars game? Not review, because I don't do reviews. I don't attack games. But my overview of Horde Wars. I'm thinking of doing it public, but I want to make sure that the few members I do have currently are cool with that, right? So you guys have say. That's part of investing. It's not a just me program, right? So that's one of those rare member things where I want to put it out. And plus, I think some people are saying I did a review on Horde Wars and probably think I'm attacking it. I'm like, nah. Yeah, the Fudge game. Because I know how much of a fan you are, but I just needed someone to really to make it easy for me. I wanted somebody who had the game. The person I talked to has the game, and they're willing to run it for me for a short time, which is enough. That's all I need, and information from him and be able to read the material a little bit more in detail so I can do a proper overview of the game. I don't do reviews because reviews is when it comes to reviews on games, it's like saying if it's good or bad. I don't really do that. If you notice, I always try to keep positive, but it's not a claimed review. I do an overview of games, and I use that word on purpose because my overview is just to tell you about the game, right? It's not to sit there and say, oh, it sucks, or it's anything like that. It's just an overview, right? Yeah, I mean, it's just a basic one. I didn't have enough for a stream on the Horde Wars, but I think the game master advice is good that I give out there because I did actually experience it. The character creation advice is pretty good on it. And the setting, which is pretty unique, lines up with the whole game. And I'm like, okay, fair enough on your end. You're cool with it. But see, people investing, if I do stuff like this, I want to make sure they're cool with it. But that's just to let you guys know that, hey, if you invest, I'm not going to what I mean? I'm not going to do something where it's not like it involve you guys in that conversation, right? So that's really important. But I do like to think that I've caused some of the other YouTubers to start wanting to have more personal connections with their audience because they see mine. And it's like, I hope I'm inspiring that because I noticed guys that were sort of blow off their audience most of the time and only talk to people that go on their streams. Now they're investing a bit more into talking to the people in their chat. And I imagine some of the guys in their chat don't like me, but really it's like, hey, if I inspired that YouTuber to connect with you more, you're welcome, even if you hate my guts, right? Even if you hate my guts, you're welcome. There you go. That I'm hoping that's it, because I'm noticing it, and I've never noticed it before. I checked out a few of these streams. I'm like, I checked out a few since I've been, connecting with you guys. And it's like, now the chat is more important to people. So I'm like, good. You guys know I like to be really honest on this YouTube channel, really honest, and sometimes it can hurt me. And here's what I mean. Here's my accusation about Yes Men sometimes. I did that video about second edition. And in reality, in gameplay, second edition is better than AD&D first edition at the table. That's a fact. That's not opinion. It plays better to players. That's a fact, not an opinion. Second edition, you complete more campaigns than the DMs that run first edition. That's a fact, not an opinion. Now, I know when it comes to the AD&D 1E guys, they don't care. Yeah, in early. I'm glad you're here, Philo. That's great. I'm really glad. It's gonna be a good night. Going to be a good night. But I was talking about the second edition video I did, and when I'm honest, I know that can really come back on me sometimes because second edition gameplay is straight out at the table with players better. Fact. It's more appealing to players on gameplay. That's a fact. That's not even debatable. More campaigns get completed with second edition than first edition. That's a fact, not even close to debatable, right? I mean, the most you could say about first edition that second edition is it has assassins. Okay, well, you can like assassins, but now I did that video and I know I got some reactions from it. I know I made some people sensitive, but I'm very honest. And here's the thing I noticed. Honesty is really not going to appeal to a lot of people because they'll go over to the guy who will say first edition is better, even though factually at the table in gameplay, second edition wins. The simplification of THAC0 is easier with second edition. Playing out plays better with players. Understands the personal connection with your character being more important right away. It lands players in that direction, which is what establishes fulfilling campaigns. Now, in first edition, they'll actually acknowledge you straight out, but it takes guys a long time to build up personalities because there's not really language pushing you towards it. Second edition does that. So in all these fronts, second edition is played out better. More campaigns completed, plays better to players, and identifying the connection with the character right away, but getting it done early instead of later. It pretty much improves and it cleans up THAC0. Now that's all honest stuff. Yet the guys who like first edition, honesty doesn't mean nothing. They'll go over to a YouTuber who's saying first edition is better in these areas. We're just factually, that's just not true. It's not true. It's not an opinion. It's just factually not true. But they'll like that content because that's what they want to hear. That's what I mean when I say there's a lot of the audience that are people that want to go to Yes Men. The Yes Man will say what you want to hear, not what's true. Right? I say what's true, and I always hope that's going to be the more appealing part of what I'm saying, but I know to a lot of guys that doesn't appeal. Reviews are fine if someone desperate for content targeted at fanboys or girls, but I'm sure practical players find overviews more helpful. I just want to help with, like, when I cover games on here for any reason, it's to help you. I mean, that's the way I look at the overviews. It's not to criticize a game or attack it. It is just that it's like if I do Horde Wars, I don't want you coming here so I can say if it's good or shit. I want you coming here because I got game master advice, player advice for character creation, and I'll tell you something maybe about the setting, especially if I just do it in a video, not in stream, right? Let me start being controversial. TSR is blamed for all this. They started the hobby. Yep. Oh, yeah. Yep. There's a mix of things where I don't hold it against WOTC as much as other people in the TSR thing, but I think you guys know this from my content. I don't just let the old school crowd off the hook and then just say this is all true about WOTC people, because I'll do this where I hold TSR people to account, yet I'll have a TSR person come across the thing and they'll leave a comment saying something like, oh yeah, you're just talking about like the new generation of players. But what they really mean is I'm talking about the WOTC, and it's like the WOTC guys. I'm like, well, no, there's some criticism there, but no, listen to the video, dude. I want you to listen again. I'm talking about the majority of old school players as well. Like I remember even when I first got online, I remember just sort of an early example. Here's a really basic example. I'm running a session and a guy comes and lurks because we're doing it in text. And now it's not like posting, but it's like live text, like Merc Chat, but it's on this thing called Open RPG. So he watches a session I run, and there is like maybe one possible encounter, and the guys avoid that. And so we go through like a almost 7 hour session where there's like no combat, and they deal with a trap, and they're going through not even a dungeon area. It's it's sort of like a dungeon and then out of a dungeon. It's a weird space, but either way, there's pretty much no combat the entire session. He's like, man, you don't seem to balance your session with like, this amount of combat. And I'm like, well, they're level 2. That was a great session, dude. He's like, yeah, but like, I don't think I want to join if you don't like got a balance of combat in your game. I'm like, oh, I see. I said, you're one of these guys that you don't understand old school D&D that well. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, old school D&D is about survival. If you're at level 2 and you have a session where you avoid combat, that's good. That's what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to avoid it. Like, they got gold that night. They got through a trap in a small area, and they avoided the one real encounter that they could have got into. There was other encounters they could have, but they could easily avoid that one. They tricked around a group of goblins, no problem. But level 2, this is the proper gameplay for old school. You are supposed to be avoiding combat at level 2. We have almost a 7-hour session online where they avoid. That's a really good session. And I'm realizing this guy, and he's an old school guy, but he's like the majority of old school guys. He expects action, right? And he doesn't really understand what old school D&D is. And I'm running it for players that do understand. It's about survival. Avoiding combat at level 2 is a fucking fantastic night, right? And I realized it's like, dude, did you pay attention to that session? He's like, well, yeah. I said, did you notice the players had a good time for the whole 6+ hours we played? He's like, well, they definitely had fun. I'm like, yeah, because you have fun with the other parts of the game. You're supposed to avoid combat at level 2, dude. Like, that's proper old school play. Like, if I force fights into it, I'm a bad DM. Like, I'm putting possible encounters in, but if I force combat in, I'm a shitty TSR old school dungeon master. I simply don't know what I'm doing, and I'm trying to run a game in a way it's not even meant to be ran. And he's like, that can't be it. And I'm like, yes, it is, dude. I said, I put possible encounters there, but the players easily avoided 2 of them. And then when they come to the 3rd, where they could have really ran into it, they got around it. That is exactly what they are supposed to do. They got gold that night. They had a great time. It was tense. They were worried about getting into the encounter. They avoided it. They had to deal with a trap. That was a bit of a headache for them, right? So they go through that night, and that's a grand session for old school TSR, especially at level 2. That is the way it is supposed to go. And that player, like many in the majority of the old school players, they're like WOTC players, and they don't want to admit this. They expect action, and they do not understand TSR old school D&D at all, right? To a real TSR player who now, I had several other lurkers in there that were real TSR guys who even came back in and said, no, Condor, I was using that screen name on OpenRPG. Condor, we're in a great session, and the players had a great time. But he goes, but there was no combat. You don't understand TSR D&D if you see a session like that with no combat and think that's bad. That is you thinking like what we would accuse the WOTC players, Wizards of the Coast players. They think action. So you would think, well, they're playing different. Why are they playing superhero characters? My straight criticism right there is it's you can't blame WOTC. They look at what the majority is doing. So if the majority is assuming action, the majority of DMs are running it incorrectly and pushing action, right? Pushing it, and players are going into it, especially early levels. That is why would if that gameplay starts breaking down because you're not supposed to do it, you're looking to survive, well, that's when you're going to grind through characters. That's when you'll hear the game get accused of being a meat grinder. So why wouldn't WotC look at that gameplay, look at the brokenness of meat grinding going through several characters? Because that's a broken element. You can hit death, traps can kill you. You might go through death. That's part of the game challenge. But most of the time, you should be able to start a character and get them pretty far, if not all the way through. Like even with AD&D 1 and 2nd edition, that should be pretty common for most players to be able to survive most of the time with Wise Move. It's your early games when you're a new player or maybe a new group where you go into the action and in a way like you go at the action, but then you lose your characters, you die, but you're supposed to learn that that's not the way you play. What happened to the majority of players in the TSR era is they, instead of thinking that's not the way to play, they just thought that is the way to play, but you're going to lose characters. You got to make a 5. No, dude, if you're making a 5, that's broken. And the game is about survival and avoiding early combat. So you're not supposed to actually go through 5 characters on average. You're not supposed to have all these characters. You're not supposed to be going at action. That is not what the designers intend. Now, I'm not saying you play whatever way you want, but if you actually look at what the designers intend, these are war gamers like Gary and that push us out here. They actually intend for you to avoid the combat, right? Again, I tell people, if they go back and read about like the encounters for the game, when they're reading about combat encounters, all the advice is about avoiding the encounter. None of the advice is about like you purposely go in looking for the fight. It's just they think like, look, if you fail to negotiate, the consequences could be combat. If you get caught up making a silly mistake, the consequences could be combat, but it's consequences. It's not something you were supposed to go at early. And that was just an example where I have proper players playing the game. But if you go to the majority, even online, the majority, that was one guy, but that was one guy who represents the majority of TSR players. They all thought right away you were supposed to go for combat. They even designed how they played. Think about how incorrect this is. Instead of realizing you're playing it like in a broken way, you hear the rumors that like people, the majority, design the way of playing, make up 4 or 5 characters. That's not the way you're supposed to play the game. Even though having more than one character is possible, you could die really easy if you face the consequences of combat or if you go into a trap. So death is part of the challenge, and you might need a backup character per se. But most of the time, you should survive with the first initial character. And that's because you're supposed to avoid combat. So in those early sessions, that's a good, like if you're a second level group and you avoid combat for like an 8 to 10 hour session, you are doing good. That's the way you are supposed, based on the designers, that's the way you're supposed to play the game, meaning you have to learn to enjoy the other parts. See, I found the majority of people that go into the action, even in TSR era, they're so used to the assumed action that they go, oh yeah, I'm talking in character. When do we get to the fighting? You're supposed to avoid it. You're supposed to actually try to really take in these other parts of the game. You're supposed to be serious about avoiding it. That's actually how you're supposed to play the game, right? But what would WotC be seeing? They're seeing the vast majority, like over 90% of players and most DMs, first to second edition, doing action. Why would then they design the game to work against that? If you're going to make changes and bring out a new version of D&D, you're going to look at what the majority is doing, and you're going to say, man, we don't want a game where people have to make up 5 characters. So what would they do? They'd start making the characters a little stronger. And if you notice the majority of people doing the action all the time, you'd step away from elements that you're not seeing. So WotC is not seeing most people play the way I'm running the game. They're seeing most people play to action. So they're going to start designing their game towards that, make it more survivable. Like instead of having you go through 5 characters, because that would look like a broken element. And in all honesty, it is broken. That's a broken way to play the game. I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that most people, like when I came on, well, I got used to the civilian groups in life, but it just amazed me how many people were playing D&D, especially early on, as an action-focused game where you purposely go at the action. Even though you get hints like, hey, if you see a dragon at level 2, you avoid it. And you'd hear all this stuff explained to you, right? But it's like, went over people's heads. Hey, Zag, what's up? What's up? I sort of dove into this a bit early, but I got some stuff written out that we can go over, sort of, right? But yeah, so old TSR D&D, early levels 1 to 3, and I said this before to you guys, is really the measure is you're supposed to look to avoid combat, and combat is a consequence. Now, how would you might say to me then, well, don't we level up if we're doing combat? Because some players don't think about this. I know a bunch of old school DMs in first and second edition actually did this. A lot in first edition, sadly. They go, we don't like a gold for XP. So they take it out of the game. And I'm like, well, as soon as you do that, you tell me you don't know TSR D&D at all. Because why would gold be the way you get experience? Well, if you're supposed to avoid the combat, right, and you're not going to get much experience if you're avoiding combat, and now if you avoid direct combat, like really a threat, I can give you some experience for that. If you just avoid it outright with no real threat at all, you get around it. I'm probably not going to give you much experience for that type of avoidance. If you go into combat, yes, you'll get some, but it's not for fighting and winning. It's for fighting and surviving. That's the idea, right? But when it came to gold, and you guys have probably heard this from me already, but it's just anybody new is coming around. I want them to hear this, especially if we're going to talk about this subject, right? The gold for XP thing is so you can get the experience you need. And then how do you balance that so people aren't getting like overwhelming amounts of gold and just going crazy? Is you put a process in, especially with AD&D, is training. So you avoid most combat, you get the gold and treasure to get your level experience points, and then you need to go spend a good share of that gold to go hire someone to train you to level up. And so if you actually follow the game the way it is put together, you realize it balances out your gold, so you're not getting like an overwhelming amount, but you're still getting a good amount left over if you play smart, and that should get you better gear on top of leveling you up. And that's how it works. If XP system rewards combat, you get murder hobo characters. This is part of what happens with TSR. Everyone starts going towards action in a way. It's like old school tabletop role-playing games didn't see action and combat as a major focus because they knew that would turn what we're doing into a sort of form of video game. Oh, and Black Rose. Oh, now that you're here, Craig says he doesn't care. What do you think of me making that Horde Wars little overview public? I want to know what you think about that, Black Rose. Should I do it or should I keep that and member only? Because I'm looking for guys that invest. They get to have say in that, right? So anyway, I just want to go over something like the TSR is so important to understand the difference between TSR and the WOTC gameplay, but people wonder why I'm so sympathetic towards WOTC gameplay. It's not that I like the WOTC editions. It's just that I'm not as critical of WOTC as other people, because mainly the people that criticize WOTC, they're playing the game in the way that WOTC is catering to. I'm like, and I'd see guys be like, well, it should be hardcore. That's easy. I'm like, but you're playing TSR D&D wrong, dude. I don't know why you're getting mad at WOTC. WOTC just seen how you played and said, we'll cater to that. They're just catering to what you do. Like, that's all it is. The better survival, better ways of getting by. So you don't just die right away. And if you're not caring so much about these other elements, why would WOTC so much care about these other elements? They're not seeing you care about it. They're seeing you get bored of the role play. And guys would skip interaction in towns. They would skip role play interaction, doing like social interaction. They would skip lots of guys. Here, we'll go to the merchant. Just tell me what you're going to buy, right? You roll a dice, and if you roll low enough, you die and are out of the game. Old D&D was more hardcore. More hardcore as far as you're right, but that's the point of you avoid stuff because it is hard to get into combat. You die easily. But that's true with Traveler, with Pendragon. Like, what game isn't like that in the old school for the most part? Because they're war gaming mindsets, right? It's meant to, like, combat is meant to be realistic and scary, right? That's the idea with combat. It's meant to be realistic and threatening. So the idea in many games is you avoid combat. In Traveler, you avoid combat. Like most of the old games, you avoid combat for the most part. It's considered a punishment. Or and to me, you'll find right away if you actually play D&D right, where you're avoiding most of the combat early, you don't go through 5 characters most of the time, and that first initial character, most of the time, especially when you have some experience, survives. Exactly, saying that was the issue. A lot of guys would just they'd skip over the social stuff, right? Well, the boss said, as long as everyone participating knows what to expect, early access members is still a thing, perhaps. Or I don't mind doing the early thing, but in some cases, there's some membership stuff I'll put up for you guys that I will not share with other people. Like they'll have to. That's investing, because I want to have quality stuff in the area where if I'm going to ask people to invest in me, I want them to feel like there's something there. It's not throwaway content. So I definitely put some stuff there, and it's not to cut off other people. For free. I put, you guys know, you guys got playlists. I have quality stuff, quality streams. The game coverages is all free. That is to draw people here. They can watch them as much as they want. They can go replay them. So it's not like I'm cutting off really good content from people, but it's just one area where it's like guys that are investing in me, you have some say. So if I go to release some of the member only stuff like this, where I put it in member only and not just early access. Now, some I might just do early access. We'll see. We'll see if I do that in the future. But just to let you guys know that if you're going to bother investing in me, I want to give you some proper say in some of the things I do. That's the benefit of investing, right? That you actually have some sway and talk with me, which is, again, I hope is appealing to the whole, investing in me part, that you actually have some say in what goes on with some of the things, right? I thought people would appreciate that, but it's not to cut off other people. I make sure there's lots of good stuff out here, but yeah, it's a lot of people were skipping the social interaction. Like if, for example, you go watch a lot of the guys that would do a lot of the action, say they were going to a merchant in the town. What would the DM do most of the time? Just tell me what you're going to buy. Make a list. Like, so, okay, there goes social interaction role play. And most of it gets skipped over. And you could tell when they go into the places, they're waiting to see if they run into combat, and they're not stopping to just play the game and appreciate it. To me, I want players who play in the moment with TSR. Like, just like Traveler, you should be playing in the moment, role playing and enjoying it. And I want combat not to be something you want to go into. I want you to be worried and avoiding it. So if you worry about it like it's scary, it gets intense. Like if you're purposely looking to avoid it, well, then it becomes an intense thing instead of something you're going, okay, well, here's what we're going to do to fight the goblins. Well, I don't want that. I only want where if you feel like, look, if you felt like strategy-wise, you made mistakes, you ran to an area, you don't think you can negotiate your way out, you see an advantage where you could take down a leader or something like that, that combat can become but it has to be strategy, has to be important. If you think you had to get into a room or there's a chance there's somebody on the other side of the door and you don't know, well, then I want the fighter character to step into the doorway. It's like, hey, guys, we're going to take a chance. I don't know if there's anyone in there, but we're going to check this room. Sometimes you can't avoid combat. It's just I hope players are always looking to avoid it, right? Especially early on. Now, to me, once you're above level 3 and you're better geared up and you're leveled up and you're geared up, the game is still meant for you to be careful with combat. Like, it's still not meant to be something you run into like it's junk. And I want people appreciating it. But what would happen with a lot of players and DMs is there's no appreciation for the role play aspect. I'm not just talking about social interaction, but the everything, right? With a clever idea that works, I reward them even more if they had to fight the encounter. Well, but you're saying the right words there, Philo. If they had to. No, if they don't have to, that's what they should be doing. And what's the consequences if they do just carelessly go into fights in a game like D&D? Make your 5 characters. What character are you on now? Number 4 or 3? You're not, you know what I mean? And there's a good chance they get wiped out if you keep playing in that mindset, going even higher levels where you're still supposed to avoid mostly, because it is a game about survival, not about fighting. And the game even tells you, it gives you hints, but guys, I'm going over guys' hits. Well, the world isn't balanced for you. That's to tell you that where the world is so scary, don't just run into fights. And they're not just talking about just the dragon out in the woods. They mean even the goblins, right? Like even the base stuff. Like it's so scary and not balanced towards you, you should be avoiding what you can. But can you avoid all combat? No. So the game understands there's consequences. You can't avoid it all. But to me, it's I'll reward you if you play it right. Like say you take out the leader or you do something really smart. But that's not the only clever ideas. Clever ideas is a lot more outside of combat than inside of combat. Combat is such a secondary part of the game. It's so secondary when I run it anyway, right? It's to me, great ideas are how you deal with a trap, right? How you make sure you're avoiding things so you're not running into combat so carelessly. What are some tricks that you're not typically using or to avoid other things, right? How do you get around checking a door? Not just that. What about the negotiation for the items you're buying from the merchant? Do you negotiate well? And is the group doing other things? So I look at good ideas and of course I reward them. Oh yeah, but here's what happens. You would think in the first bit, you would go in, say you're learning as a new group. You go in, you lose a set of characters, like a total party kill, right? What you're hoping is that players are learning how dangerous combat is. Now, of course, you want a DM to start throwing hints there, to survive, probably avoiding combat for the most part should be good. But if you have a DM that doesn't even think that way, and the DM, just like the player, thinks, well, okay, you went through that set of characters. Let's hope on the next fight you don't just die so easily. The next fight. See, you start realizing even a lot of the DMs. Boom. And so what is WOTC watching? They're not watching groups avoid combat. They're watching groups come up with methods to do the combat. So why would you make the 5 characters? You're mostly dying from combat at that point. Actually, most DMs aren't running many traps or puzzles, sadly. So even though there's all kinds of ideas out there, they're not as frequent as people want to say they are in public. A lot of games are barely any. I use them more than other guys, right? But I'd see a lot of guys using combat. So what do? They start styling the approach to the game as make 5 characters instead of learn you are supposed to avoid that. And basically, most of the time, if played right, most of the time, the first initial character should survive most of the game. Managed to survive a few before that guy, though. But that one got him good. See, it's like this. I don't mind after a certain level, you start taking more chances. But if you're going to take chances towards action, I prefer level 3, level 4, going up. I think that's why Gary Gygax, when he had experienced players, he'd always start the game at level 3. Well, why would he skip the early levels? Because he knows the guys do want to do some more combat. But effectively in TSR D&D, to do more combat, like comfortably, where you can take more chances, is to be above levels 1 and 2, which are early levels, and you're supposed to avoid most of that stuff. He'd start at level 3, and of course, just like many of his guys would lean into combat, right? Oh, that's. I see your point there. I was wondering. But yeah, there's nothing wrong. I think combat's fun. I think Black Rose would agree with me. I feel like when you get into the combat, it's exciting. It can be. I get why people are attracted to it. But that means the designers their mindset towards the game was towards players that weren't much for wargaming, right? Most still start at level 3, no doubt, because that's still probably towards action too, just like Gary, still leaning more into action than away from it. Now, new D&D is more about action from the get-go, but I get what you're saying. Probably even more action, more comfort on the action without the character possible death. But I do know what you're talking about. It's just that I think they designed a game originally purely for wargamers that would deeply have the patience. Like, look, for the few guys that come here that are wargamers, they're going to know what I mean. Wargamers will play to avoid. They'll go through 8-10 hour sessions with no combat at all, and they'll be very picky about everything. Get into the combat, avoid it. That would be them. But if you get to the majority, which are outside of wargamers, the vast majority of TSR players and WOTC players, they're not wargamers. So they come to the game with a different mindset, but here the design team has designed a game for a different player set, right? That's, I think, what happens, right? But there's more action. It's just like, we all got to be honest. I wasn't offended. Like, I was never mad at players for playing this way or DMs, but it's one of these things where I don't acknowledge it to insult people, but it's for us to understand why things happen. For me, and the reason I'm reasonable with WOTC, unlike other old school guys, is because I accept the truth. And by accepting the truth, I don't get offended by the WOTC editions as much as some of the other old school guys that you might hear crap on WOTC editions, right? Because I look at WOTC and go, oh, they're doing superhero cards. Yeah, but can you be mad at them when WOTC is looking at how people play in the old school, the vast majority, and they're going, we're going to cater to that and not the other thing. They're not seeing the other thing. They're seeing most people play towards action, avoid a lot of things. Dice rolls. Like, I remember things where they avoided a lot. Here's the sad. A lot of games, guys would even like get frustrated needing to look through a room. Let's read what's here. I never had a boring combat in that regard. Players feel it dangerous yet meaningful. They can be dangerous. The thing is, what happens with a lot of games? You might get one DM that's going to measure it out right, but just say you say that's a standard there, Black Rose. What happens? Now we know most DMs. What happens? Meat grinder. There's going to be a ton of character death. Like, if you see, it's one thing to have what the minority would do, but when you pass out the minority principle over to the majority, what do the majority do with that? And then what does that entail for the majority of players if they start running into the guys that aren't running it that well? Right? So why would you want to have a little bit more control on it overall, is to make sure even the guys that aren't so hot on running it aren't just blowing up their games with similar principles because they take it a bit too far, like an edge. And D&D is on an edge. And that means you could play it where you can keep guys alive or give a little bit more combat, but give that to any other DM a nudge over, and there goes 4 characters. Meat grinder. And just a nudge. That's how close to death you are early on. Like, the ease in death is just right there. As long as everyone can roll a crit, things are interesting. That's the thing. You need to have those roll nights. But what happens on the nights that are rolling? We all know, and that's most nights. So what would happen? Most people are coming in where they're getting DMs warning them, make 5 characters. That was so common that it's like, I just tell people, I get it. There's some people out there, a minority of us, especially guys I draw here. Guys I draw here, I know are going to be, decent fucking people and know their shit. So I expect some of my regulars here to, their experience or the way they ran it was a bit more controlled. Like, control factors, a bit more balanced. But I'm not getting at you guys. I'm saying, what happens when we meet the majority of DMs, which are not you? And there's a line between the way you're running it and the meat grinder. And you know it, and I know there's a line there. And a slight over, especially without crits, is people are saying, Miles, yeah, I think the reality is the majority of players like having their characters basically be heroes and do heroic feats in D&D. Miles, this is what WOTC picked up on. I'm not mad at WOTC for it. Miles totally gets it. And this is what you're seeing with a lot of players. They want to go in and kick ass. That's the truth. You talk to most players. Now, I'm not mad at players for it, but you start understanding the designers of old school made a game for a different group of people. But the majority of people that came to the game were not those people. So you get the majority coming to the game for the let's fight, let's have action, let's skip a lot of the stuff. But it makes a lot of other areas that are interesting in the game get avoided by a lot of people. It's nice to have a small minority of people that run it a little better, balance it out, careful with their fucking combat when they do put it in there for the fun and the thrill. But most people, what would happen if you pass that principle on to them? Okay, their combat's going to get characters killed frequently. That's the majority. So that is what WOTC sees. They're not seeing Black Rose do a more balanced take on the combat early. They're not seeing a minority of people get it more right than wrong and have a good time. They're seeing most people, and what's a very popular thing? Make 5 characters. I'm saying something, and I'm saying it on purpose in the stream because a lot of guys out there, when I say this, are going to relate with what I'm saying. Like, this is commonplace. It might not be for some individuals that will come across this, but this make 5 characters for the game or make 4 characters for the game is so commonplace, it's popular. Like, the concept is popular. It's quite a regular thing to be done. Why would it be done? It's because they're going through a meat grinder, because that combat, it's not meant to be faced that way. What WOTC does, and Miles is getting this right, players want to play that game. So what does WOTC do? They cater to it so you don't got to go through a meat grinder. But they're not thinking of making a game for Black Rose, who's more balanced. They're looking at the majority of guys, Black Rose, that are going to take your method and blow it up, not get it right, break over the edge. So they're going to see the foul up more than anything. And WOTC's going to go, well, how do we prevent games from needing like 5 characters every time? Because that seems broken, and it is. So WOTC makes 3rd edition, and when you look, 2nd edition is sort of where they start doing the experimenting with the splat books. Now, a lot of 2nd edition guys, as Black Rose knows, we didn't use that stuff, right? But the feats is introduced in 2nd edition. Even the thing I started using more regular, which came out sort of hinted at in AD&D 1E, but really became more of a regular thing, was going into minuses for bleeding, right? So there's a better chance you could survive than just die, 0 hit points. At 10, I was sort of a war gamer. Player 1, got the Star Wars Hoth play set for Christmas. Just need any dice and my imagination, and my older brother got the BX D&D. Well, I know, Monkey, you get old school gaming. I know you. I've talked to you enough times now. I know you get it. You even probably appreciate. I could tell you're relating a lot more with the be careful about combat than most of the other guys here, which means you have played the more war gamey, take your time, don't get into combat, have a guy survive most of the time. My tears kept many of my characters alive. But I bet Monkey, you know what I'm talking about. After a certain point, and you get to the majority of people, sadly, they're not like people that are wargaming, right? Not saying there's even Black Rose, a bit more of a wargamer, a bit more balanced on the way he approaches combat. But most guys, it blows up. You get your 5 characters. And I don't think most people realize that is not how you're supposed to run or play, at least from the designer point of view. I'm not saying people are wrong, play it or run it how you want, right? I think that's the freedom with D&D. But from the designer's point of view, that is not how you're supposed to play the game. And this is where I think Miles is totally reading into this the right way, because this is where I read into it. This is the wisdom I took away from it, where I looked at 3rd edition and went, and 3rd edition was trying to take some of the splat book stuff from 2nd edition and adapt it over. The feats were already in 2nd edition in splat books. So the survivability aspect was already being played into 2nd edition more than the earlier editions, which means in reality, if TSR would have stayed in business, likely their team still would have went after something similar to 3rd edition. That's my theory. Because most of the guys that made 3rd edition were TSR guys. It wasn't like they had a whole new WOTC team. Most of the guys that crossed over from Chris Perkins and other people were all TSR staff members. People forget this. Chris Perkins worked for TSR. So when they went over to make 3rd edition, it was the TSR guys, and they had already introduced a lot of their 3rd edition ideas into splat books for 2nd edition. So the direction of most people want combat, and you don't want a broken game of making 5 characters, you're going to start catering to the majority. And why are they catering to the majority? You're a business. You need to make money and sell the game. You can't cater to the hobbyist, right? That's what they figured out. The hobbyist just wasn't purchasing the stuff at a rapid pace. Hobbyists were more picky, but we are, right? Like you'll notice with WOTC, and this is where I criticize the old school. WOTC will put out some adventures or something, especially early on, that would seem a little off-putting, but for people would buy it, and buy it even when they made mistakes. They were the same TSR people. It wasn't like they even had Hasbro right away. They're still putting out things carelessly like TSR did, but the new majority, being catered to more, went and purchased the stuff. When you are putting that same type of challenging stuff out to the hobbyists are so picky, they're like, no, I'm not buying that. And that's that different customer mindset decides that you're staying in business compared to you're going out of business. Right? So WOTC's putting out similar errors. They're making similar errors in their business moves, but the customers are purchasing anyway because they're going after a new customer. And this is, how can I say it? I hate to say it, but it's a customer a little less bright than a lot of us. That's just, and I'm not saying all WOTC people, but they're definitely more not in the deep mind thinking thing. They're purchasing shit, and they're purchasing stuff that the hobbyist would have turned down if that was TSR putting that product out. And they did. If you went and go back to TSR, they put out similar products. TSR guys were just going, nope, not buying that. Like I bought Birthright. Most people didn't buy Birthright. And Birthright was leaning back into the somewhat shared world gimmick and trying to get people to lean back a bit into the tournament play again, right? But tournament play fell off. It just didn't work. It just didn't work because you have to align a bunch of people together and a bunch of DMs. It did work online, like I said, for a while with the third fire stuff. But here's what I didn't like about some of the. We'll go over to watch it. Speaking of D&D, you mentioned playing games online. Are you going to stream your games or post videos of them here? Well, I got a couple people now. I think Black Rose is going to join that too. Already into that group I told you guys about. It's a time thing. It's getting people in there, us talking, figuring what games that we can all play together, right? There's some games already thought of. I told you that, of course, if we can get the right people in there, I have no problem streaming games. I've done a little over 70 live streams of running games before. So it's completely not new to me to live stream games. I have no issue with it. That's on previous channels that I had, right? But this one, I just got to get the players together. That's it. Just don't have the players that would agree. Like I had players before that would always play online. I just don't have players right now that would play live on cat. Like I got to talk to these guys. Now, some of these guys might want to play in private, which is most players. Somehow it's not always easy just to get people to want to do the live stuff, right? Or, well, just expectation. It just some is challenging. Like some players might only want to do typing. So in some cases, like that type of environment, that's not going to be a live play situation. I can't join the group though, but I'd love to see that series time issues. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I got a couple guys in there so far, Miles. It is something I would do. So it's just time. It's just down to time, and we'll see how many people want to join that and actually do some live stuff. But it's not like I can snap my fingers and go, oh, it's going to happen. You need to get the right people. That's all that is. It's one of these things where remember, I just put out the video the other day, so it's like a starting the project. And I hope in the long run, we get there. That is definitely part of the aim. I do want to do some live plays just to show people. Right. But I mean, it's a chance for people that want to see if I'm as good as I say I am. You can get in and try it out, right? Oh, yeah. I don't care. I don't do see, the thing is, I'll be honest with you guys. I don't cater to the audience when I run a game. So I cater to you guys here, but I won't cater to the audience when I run a live play at all. Like to me, It's authentic. Like, I'll do this if, like, I see other guys out there. Let's see if the audience will do this. I'm like, look, I hope you guys, if you leave a super chat, that would be awesome. But if you're like, super chat and do this to the player, nope. No, I'm running a real game. That would never happen at a real game. It's not going to happen. So if I do it live, and I did over 70 live plays, and I was quite happy. It just really bothers me. I had so much good content before YouTube went and killed those channels. So it's sad because I had the whole Storm Wars campaign ran on there. I even had a campaign where there's another person that actually ran a lot of sessions where I actually got to play. And people actually get to hear me play. That was actually quite fun. I had not played in a few decades, understand, in any serious way, and I did a little live playing, right? No. Some people do, though. It's just that wouldn't be something I do. But am I shy about running a game on? Like, no, not at all. Jeez. I mean, I hate to say it, Miles, but just go look at what's out there. There's nothing to be shy about, right? It's not like there's a bunch of guys running the game so fucking great, right? That I'm just being real with you. If you're marketing very profitable miniatures alongside TTRPGs, this probably helps condition the player's expectation too. The promises of endless combat suggest necessity. You know, what I didn't like with some of the WOTC stuff was this. Because I've seen hits of it with the majority in the TSR. So this is me jumping a little over to WOTC. I hate the concept of the fucking perception check. Because I don't care what people would tell me it was for. The way I seen it used so consistently was to avoid the most basic thing. You know, in D&D, say you're in a dungeon especially, I like the interaction between me and players. I love that relationship. I love you going into a room and I tell you there's a bed here, there's a table here, there's a thing here, and going through the process of having you manually tell me to look. Now, look, at one point, if you make the effort and look around and move things, then we can go to what they call an intelligence check, like a basic check or something, right? To see if you find something, or you find it with your own effort. Like you just simply look in the right place without, like, you know what? There's a pillow. I'm going to tear the pillow open. Oh, okay, you do that. Like, I like that manual interaction between players and Dungeon Master. And I like here's an important thing that I think a lot of guys don't know. I see this happen in WOTC games all the time when they start with 3rd edition. They would do this perception check stuff where you go in the room, make a perception check to find the thing, or if not, you fail to find the thing. And failing to find the thing made no sense to me. It's just like, just fucking look, just bypass this shit. But here's what I don't think most guys realized. I'll read the rest of what Craig is saying here. Play 40K without miniatures too, but not many players do. Agreed. You could 100%, Craig. I actually agree with you. You might want to do some paper notes, but you could do that. You actually could, for real, do that. Steal from the thrill of the adventure for everyone. There's an interaction thing, but there's something else, Monkey. I noticed this with 3rd edition. It was something I just noticed. There's a minor thing happening when I have you thinking. So when you're going through the time of looking through the room, or you're looking through hallways, like the interaction without a perception check, just the plain out verbal, you need to look around, pay attention up here, look down, do all this. Here's what I notice. It keeps you, the player, thinking. Yeah, like rolls too. It's like I just don't want the dice roll to get in the way in that way. Like, put it this way, what I would do is let you go as far as you could, make your effort, and if you found nothing through your best effort to look around the room, I might give you a check, right? At that stage. But I want the interaction and your effort to see if you can find it or not, right? The tabletop role-playing game, if you mean tabletop wargaming, I played many battles with cardboard boxes and pencil markers. Yeah, that's what he's talking about. I'm 100% sure that's exactly what Craig is mentioning, because I actually agree with him. Yeah, couldn't afford minis because miniatures were quite costly. But to go back to this, it's a minor thing, but we're in a mind game. And when I have you doing the interaction in the room, all of you guys will get this, but it's something you have to, it's something you pick up as a DM through experience. So like you don't really realize the effectiveness of it until you watch the WotC games and you see where they get hurt in the game. And this is not to attack anybody who plays WotC, not Miles, nothing. It's just something I honestly noticed. It's not an attack. It's just to say this. In that environment, when I finally got you to the bigger challenges, the traps or the big boss with the maybe some weird form of trap around them or something where your mind really has to burn, if I have your mind going actively throughout the session, throughout the dungeon, throughout the place, you are, I call, warmed up. It's like you're ready to think. And the more interaction, also this, there's a lot of social interaction that is happening between characters when you're not bypassing everything with rolling the dice. So the characters need to talk to each other, and players start talking. I'd be like, well, talking character in the room, talk amongst yourselves to see where you want to look in the room, or maybe you can look here. But social interaction is involved in all these little things, tiny things, but very important to build up the relationship, develop the character, because you're getting used to talking in character, and then that little mind going. So by the time I get you to a trap or to a big bad or something, your mind is fucking warmed up and you're better at communicating. You're better at everything. All good. I watched a shitload. I lurked a shitload of 3rd edition games on purpose. And I'll get to it. I'll read what you're saying in a second here, but I want to make my point is I would see them bypass shitloads of this stuff with something basic like a perception check. So that means you're skipping looking around a lot of stuff. You're skipping the social interaction between characters. You're skipping the mind thinking about what you want to find. I'll read this. I believe you that many guys adjust, but I'm saying I'll talk about the majority, but I'll read this. What about like scenarios where it's ambush? Well, this is the thing. I don't, unless there's something the ambushes are giving off, I expect you every time you're walking through a place to be telling me what you're doing. Now, if you tell me what you're doing, that's when I think of I think of perception, intelligence is like the intelligence check being sort of the same concept in old school, but it's more manual. It's like it's more you need to pay attention. How do you think you ran into the gelatinous cube? Gelatinous cube was a monster that a lot of new players ran into for one simple reason. They weren't paying attention and having their characters actively look around. But you can do that, can't you, Miles? Is there anything stopping you as a player to tell me your character is paying attention? To tell me your character looks around as they walk? Is there anything stopping you from doing that? No. All right. So if you're making an active effort to look for the ambush or to look for possible threats, then we could talk about a dice roll. But if you're randomly walking through an area, this is the carelessness of a new player. You're not telling me you're looking around. You're not paying attention. And what's a price you can pay? The gelatinous cube, for example. It's a great way to teach players you got to pay attention. This is how you avoid or have a chance of avoiding ambushes. Now, I also consider the enemy that might be trying to ambush you. So there is a chance that even though you're being careless, it's not a perception check I'll give you. I'll give them a dice roll, right? To see if they're going to fuck up and give themselves away with some noise. And there's a chance that could happen. So there's other ways. But if you give the perception check, you bypass thinking. Now the game is, the thought, the mind goes off. The mind's turned off. And now I'm giving you an easy out and you're not learning anything. And your mind's inactive. You get lazy. It makes you fucking lazy. I don't want you to be mentally lazy while you play the game. I want you to know that you have to tell me. Think about your words as like a controller, right? You have complete control and there's nothing stopping you. And so if you use the controller right, I then give you the checks. But you got to use the controller right. There is an amount of responsibility on you as a player because you're being challenged. And the game is not meant to be easier on you, but it can be if you play it right. So if you make it's get your mind working, get your mind thinking. It's a mind game, right? It's a mind game. See, if I don't make you use your mind, it stops being a mind game. it starts being a roll the dice board game. Like, do you see this? It's a slight difference, but it's important to see the difference because you're turning your mind off. It's a mind game. Now it's a dice rolling board game, right? That's what perception would turn the game into. You're bypassing all the thinking, but what's really happening? I would notice third edition DMs would get up their players. They would let them bypass that. Even the ambush thing, I know what you're talking about. They would let you catch an ambush without trying. They would let you find the thing in the room without trying, just perception checks. So brains are turned off. There's a lot less social interaction and brains are turned off. What happens when they finally get to a potential trap or a big boss that includes a lot of thinking? You have guys with their minds. And what would happen in third edition? As much as we want to think they're safe, there's a lot of total party kills that happen in third edition. But when would the total party kill happen? Well, you're not wrong, but I hope you're picking up what I'm saying. I'm explaining this in detail, so there's no getting around what I'm saying. Gelatinous Cube teaches you this, right? Of course it is, but it's like saying it's just a board game. Is that all it is? So if it's not, then you need to have both elements playing at the same time. Hence, you need to think and you're playing the board game. That's what the gelatinous cube is there for. If it's just a board game, then there's no mind effort from you. Now, understand, you got to understand. It's not too... Now, with WOTC, that's actually fine. But you got to understand, old school is made for people that are hobbyists. So these are people that want the challenge and expect the game to be that way. And if they see someone else doing the game a different way, that's when they see the game as being less about mind, more about dice rolling. You can't keep calling it a mind game if the dice let you bypass all your thinking. That's the criticism. Now, I'm not trying to attack, but if you want to understand why people see what WOTC games are doing differently, why they see it as different, but what happens really is a lot of that. Some of that happens with TSR, but just not as much. Even the action's bad, but they're still at least putting this on more players, and that's a huge difference. You go from you need the player to think their way through a situation to the dice bypassed thinking their way through. Right? Like it's now the dice is protecting you, or the dice is even worse. If the dice fail, so what about this, Miles? What if you looking around and paying attention? Well, if you do that, now I can play the carelessness of the goblins. But you got to pay attention for me to let you take advantage of that carelessness. So say you just simply say you look around and they fail and you see it. But what happens if we only go back to the perception check? So what happens if you fail the perception check without all that going on? Now you're getting ambushed and your opportunity from your own effort is now gone. So you could have protected yourself by me challenging you to say you look around. You would have had a better opportunity in a certain way, but now the perception check is controlling the game and your mind isn't, right? Metagaming, players think the GM wants me to roll perception here, so it must be a trap, ambush, hidden treasure. Yeah, you start getting assumptions, you start getting all kinds of things. Perception was just bad, but it's looking at how most people are being careless playing the game, and they're trying to cater to this. The perception check, I just don't think they understood the effect. But what happens? No, here's what I'm saying. I think you're missing it. What would happen? Because I watch these games all the time with the ambush. So the ambush is if you fail, you're getting ambushed. Right? There's just not really much. You might do a stealth check to see how good the ambush goes. But what if your mind just overcomes that whole thing? You look around, you see the carelessness of the goblins. You don't need a stealth check. And to me, what I'd be saying, Miles, here's the debate. There's nothing wrong. If people want to play that way with WOTC games, go ahead. My argument would be is Why the pushback on getting you to think for yourself? That's my only thing to WotC players. It's like, if I'm telling you this game is a mind game and you're playing a dice game without using the mind anymore, do you see the difference between the two games? Right? In this game, it's on you. In this game, it's on the dice. And that's an important difference between WotC and old school. That is what I just explained to you is accurate. That's exactly how they say it. The character, your skill as a player is important in old school. In the new school, WotC, it's the character's ability, meaning you drop the mind game. Now you go more board, more dice rolling, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm an old school guy, so that's obviously not going to be a preference for me. But I'm showing you the finer changes between the two. One expects the player, puts more on the player to think and use their mind. It's a mind game. Makes it unique. When you go to the dice, when you start getting away from the mind, this is how you can start turning it into a video game. This is how you easily get more video game stuff. And you get more to the miniature stuff. Here's what I liked about old school, where it was more abstract, more theater of the mind. It's harder to make video games when you're playing the game most of the time in theater of the mind. If you start requiring miniatures more, my argument to people was, it's a backdoor for video games. And if anybody could deny that, I don't know how they could. And look at Baldur's Gate 3 as a great example. Miniatures is a complete backdoor for video games, right? It's harder to make a video game with abstract theater of the mind. And old school is more of that, right? More up in the head, more of this than miniatures. But I understood what WotC did. They leaned more into it, but then they started going with plastic miniatures. So it became affordable. So the expectation that you're using miniatures becomes realistic. And that's how WotC changed the game for miniatures. Because before WotC, there wasn't plastic. They weren't aiming at plastic. It was metal. And the cost of miniatures was so much, most people did this. Most people didn't use miniatures. Miniatures, when they went plastic, this is how WotC changed the game. A lot of the old school guys leaped into this. A lot of old school guys that say they're old school now, there's some deceit there, because I catch them out, because they'll be like, miniatures has always been part of it. But the thing is, they just weren't actually there during the old school era, because if they were, they would know that's not the case. They would realize they came into the hobby or more active gaming a little later, past the old school era, and they hit the WotC era, where, of course, miniatures are more affordable even for the old school guys, right? But that's plastic. There's nothing wrong with all this, but it is, you got to see the differences. And it's not like to say one's better than the other, but it's like, what do you want? I want a mind game. I guess some people prefer the other way, right? Well, all right, I'm fine with players thinking for themselves, which is old school, but still a game, of course. Nothing stops that from being a game. It's a combination effect. It's what separates it from a board game. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you have board games, you have storytelling. Like, it's the combination over here is what makes it what it is. That's what I would say. So my question for you is, where do you say no for allowing players to think? Where do I say no for allowing players to think? Maybe I'm just missing this. My question is for you, where do you say no for allowing players to think? Like, is there a place in the game where it's just bypassed with dice rolling? Clarify for me, just so I don't get that question wrong. Maybe that just went over my head a bit. just clarify exactly what you mean. I don't mind answering. It's not trying to have a debate. What I'm trying to do is say, here's the honest truth, the difference between the two, right? And perception is a great example of changing the game pretty drastically, because you're turning the mind off. But here's what I would find the outcome was. This would be the worst part of it. By the time a DM would get players in a third edition game to a place where they had to think, because there were parts of the game where you had to think less than dice rolling, even for third edition. When they get their groups there, imagine you're playing with a group of players whose minds have been turned off most of the session. And then on the spot, you're like, okay, guys, it's time to hard think. And you would see total party kills just wipe out groups of players because they weren't ready to think. And what I noticed as a DM my years playing with TSR is if you have players thinking all the way through a session, by the time they get to these challenges, they're ready. Like they've been practiced, they've been using their minds, they've been pushed. So they're ready to think and they're better at communicating with each other. They've been talking in character more. There's more development, more interaction, more everything. So there's better communication, which is better team play as a group, right? You're working together better because you're spending more time talking, using your mind, thinking, playing through stuff instead of using just dice to bypass lots of stuff. And that's a big effect when you get to certain parts of third edition where now you have to think suddenly, but you've just played an entire game where most of the session is perception, 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 and you're not thinking. Perception's taken. Oh, okay, that's the ambushing. Oh, okay, that's I find the thing in the room. Not much thinking. You're not spending much time doing it. There's not a lot of social interaction happening because of that. So you cut back on all these things. Yeah, if I describe, let me read this. If I describe a scene and players say they look for an ambush, from what I'm understanding, they don't roll. They know it's coming because the goblins are not sneaky bypassing a roll. No, I'll clarify that for you. I think you misunderstood me. I'll get this. I'm going to read what Monkey says here. I only ever use miniatures in computer role-playing games like Wasteland, Fallout, Pool of Radiance. Yep. Because I didn't have a choice on the computer screen. Well, it's completely different. That's totally Monkey. That's how that has to go. Remember, but miniatures were optional. It wasn't like they weren't in the game. It was just an optional thing, right? What point do you make them have to roll something in dice rolling? Okay, so it doesn't mean there's no dice rolling. You missed this part. What I'm saying is, initially, you're walking down the hall, right? Or you're walking through a place where it could be an ambush, maybe a forest. Well, what was the point of the gelatinous cube in old school D&D? Gelatinous cube was if you don't say anything as a player, like if you don't tell me your character is paying attention, you can just run into a gelatinous cube, and I'm not going to give you a dice roll, no intelligence check to avoid it. You haven't tried. Good chance you're running right into the gelatinous cube. It's going to be a horror story. What is that going to teach you? As a player, you need to start telling me, the DM, that you're paying attention. You're looking, or something attacks you from the ceiling. You got to verbally start telling me you're doing that. Now, once you make a minor effort, but it's going to make you think, right? That you're looking around. Okay, you're interacting with me. But it's an expectation that if you mentally get lazy and you forget to tell me that you're looking down the hall or looking around the forest or looking up, if you get mentally lazy, there goes the dice roll. Like now there's a likely chance you're getting jumped, like, or you're getting attacked, or you're running into the gelatinous cube. Now, if you tell me you're looking and you're not being lazy that night, it's not even a big issue. You get to what you might call the perception check, like an intelligence check, but you also get a potential other thing, depending on what you're doing. If you look up, you might just see the enemy right away. If you look around, I might go, well, the goblins aren't that well camouflaged. Forget the sneak thing. Just make some simple roll. Or maybe I even have this. I decide just by you looking around, these guys are not that fucking well camouflaged. I might just decide that as DM. I'm allowed, right? By you just looking around, now you see them. No dice roll. You bypassed everything. You now get to see them. Let me just, I got to read what the other guys are saying here. If I had to paint miniatures for TTRPG war games, I never had time to roll dice. I hear that. I don't know if it's the same thing, but in my game of Cyberpunk, a player wanted to distract subway station, gets past the security. He never rolled an awareness. Okay, just reading a little bit here. He asked if he could distract with some smoke. Rolling came from him making the stuff in an attempt to throw. But see, you're actively doing stuff. In old school gaming, if you played it smart, you don't always need a dice roll to protect your ass, especially when your mind is working. Your mind can overcome a dice roll, right? Your mind could just give me such a fucking great idea that I'm like, yeah, you don't need a fucking dice roll. That will work. That's the great thing with the mind, the old game. Now, reading what Miles saying here. Okay, here's where I think we differ. I assume characters are always being alert and looking. That's the thing. Most players are being lazy in a lot of parts. So what does it teach players? Because you want them to be their minds active going. This is part of the role play. Like this is part of the having a player on edge. If you assume the character is doing that, now the player doesn't have to think no more. What are you doing again, Miles? The brain is turning off. This is the point. The mind, you want, as a DM, you want the mind on. That's why I need you to state it to me, so I know you're not forgetting. Because then I know you're thinking about the game, and that means you're focused on the game. If I just assume, now you, the player, could just be out in the fucking wilderness mentally. But I'm going to give you the easy out. And that's the difference. You go back to dice rolling, just pure board game. I go to, board game, but mind game, like the combination, where it's player skill, player focus, more than it is a dice protecting your ass. Because what you're doing is letting the dice in the game protect the player who might be being mentally lazy that night. You're letting it assume, and that bypasses the pressure to have a player focused on the game. And what happens when you get players like that aren't focused, aren't using their minds to a spot where they need to think finally in the 3rd edition session? You blow them up. Their minds have been off. Perception checks have let them go by. They don't have to be alert mentally. They don't have to focus on the game. By the time you get to that spot, their minds are not there. They've been lazy that night. They're not that focused on the game. You're taking pressure off them to keep them focused on what they're doing. So it doesn't matter how many nights. It's just a good experienced player in a TSR game knows that they always need to mention that they're looking around. They always need to make the DM aware that they're mentally doing stuff. But that also tells the DM something else. They're thinking about it. They're focused on the game. They're focused on what's happening. When players forget to tell me, and see, I've had experienced players get caught up. They go in and they forget to tell me they're looking around. Well, oh shit, you're having an off night, aren't you? And you could just see a good experienced player will curse himself out. He'll forget to say something, get to a spot, he gets jumped, and he's like, damn, I know. I forgot. Yeah, you did forget, dude. Yeah, you did. And now you got to pay a price. The role came from him making. Oh yeah, it was earlier for Zagreus, but that's the difference, Miles. Is the small difference between what you're doing is what I'm doing keeps the player focused on the game and thinking about what's going on. What you're doing is that guy could be thinking about what he's going to eat after the session, or where he's going next week. But his mind could be turned off because you're gonna protect him with a dice roll. You're going to assume so he doesn't have to mention anything. But that also means there's a good chance he's not so focused on the game. It doesn't mean it is for sure, but it means there's an opportunity there where he might not be focused on what's going on. And that's the example of the gelatinous cube one. I did that video about the monsters, that very popular one. And that's what in dungeon crawling, the gelatinous cube is especially there to teach you, like many other things are, to pay attention. And you're supposed to, and that your mind and your verbal words control what you're doing. That's the big difference. As long as they're expressing it, that's the same thing. But I totally hear you, Black Rose. I think that's cool. I've seen in person. I'll let people say like, or do this like, yeah, I'm walking through the hallways, and they just have to mention my character's doing this. You still got to say it. You still got to verbalize. There's still some slight verbal you got to throw in there. But then expressing what you're doing is fine. You don't got to tell me exactly. Just, this is what my character's doing. Okay. Then it's clear communication. You don't got to say he's looking around. Just say, this is my character's doing. Oh, fine. Okay, you're looking around. As long as it communicates the same thing, it still tells you, Black Rose, the player is focused. on what the activity in the game. It's just the perception check bypasses that pressure on a player. And it's even worse in third edition when you get them to the spot where it's a challenge to think. I would see this total party kills. Players weren't ready to think through it. Yet you take a TSR group into some of these situations that have had to properly think through a session. Their minds are prepared and they're better interacting. They're better communication. And that room thing is really important too. Perception check. Well, there goes searching around the room, talking to the other characters, doing all the minor activities. So it's just turning it into a board game. Now, I have nothing against WOTC people enjoying that, Miles. It's not meant to attack, but it is to say the big difference here. There's nothing saying one is better than the other, but this is why I prefer the focus, because I find these things work better personally. It's a personal thing. If you don't mind players being a little off on certain nights, hey. But I found that was a big issue. And I actually noticed it play out that way. And I mean, not just 1 or 2 sessions I would go see. I go lurk in person and lurk online, especially when it came out in open RPG. I'd watch it all the time. It was just the amount of times it flopped. And I'd start talking to third edition DMs that were pretty cool with me. And they were surprised that I would talk to them because there was that big edition war between them. But they actually liked me because I was a cool guy. So I go talk to them, like, just, hey, not here to start shit with you. I want to shoot the shit with you, right? After their sessions. And I'd be like, yeah, another total party killing. He's like, yeah, man, I don't know what's going on. These guys I get to this part and they fucking shut down on me. I'm like, I can give you a slight bit of advice. And I have guys ask me, I'd be like, you got guys not thinking through most of your session. They're simply, as much as I get it's a good challenge, they're not ready for it. And the guys would have to admit this. You can't run it and then deny it by the time, especially if you're talking to me right after it happened. It's like they'd be like, yeah, okay, yeah. And because they'd have it happen to them multiple times. So I'm like, yep, your guys are in the zone. And I said that the cursed part is that perception check. Now, I actually convinced a few third edition guys on Open RPG to actually stop applying it so much and start applying it more like the intelligence check, and started actually getting at their players, which our players got mad. There was a few arguments over that. But right away, when the guys would actually get players paying attention more mentally, just like old school, they would agree. It was a big difference between getting that group there thinking compared to bypassing the thinking with the dice roll. And they notice, okay, yeah, these guys are way more ready for that scene. Right now, it doesn't seem so overwhelming anymore. I'm like, exactly. It's a minor change, but it's just something you pick up from DMing a lot, right? With D&D, the mental thing. Well, that's what I'm trying to tell you. I was cool about it. So even though there was all this clash between people online, I wasn't like that. So third edition guys were actually cool with me, right? Because I'm just going as a DM, giving a shit about your experience and not hating you for the game you play. Remember, I didn't just do D&D at the same time also. Remember, D&D is something a lot of other people would take the label on. I'd be like, I do Traveler, I do, Heroes Unlimited, I do Call of Cthulhu, I do Pendragon, right? Like I do Cyberpunk like Philo, right? I do Rollmaster, right? I do Villains and Vigilantes, DC Heroes, right? I do all these games. So I never pigeonhole myself as just a D&D DM. So, but the similarity and the focus, it's in almost every old school game because it's so important that it's a mind game. That was the way old school looked at this. And even the old school tabletop role-playing games were all like, it's up here. How you play doesn't matter at the end of the day. I never had a personal issue with how people play the game as long as they're having a good time. But what would happen? I would go watch and I'm like, well, hopefully they're having a good time, but I would notice a lot of party kills or a lot of party killing happening. And then little things. A lack of paying attention. There were some weird things that I would notice, like in person, guys not sitting up and paying attention to the game. And why? Because there's no pressure on them to be focused on the game. They'd be twiddling their thumbs. They'd be half there. And that became a regular thing, where if you look over at the TSR game in person, every player is sitting up paying attention, because if you don't, you die. Right? So it was a different energy, different experience. And I thought, man, I have nothing against WOTC, but my one big criticism was the perception. It wasn't even the feats, even though I'm not a big fan of feats and I never use them for second edition. That was the perception thing, was not even the miniature. I never had no problem with miniatures. I don't give a fuck. It was that one gimmick that bothered me the most, because it to me, that was a harmful part of the game, was perception, the perception check. It was such a powerful change. Like, you'd think such a minor thing wouldn't change the entire thing, but it did. It went from player skill to now the dice protect you. Now the game protects you, and that's two different games right there. That's to me, a lot of people said, well, third edition or WOTC games are not really D&D. Well, I'm like, they're not that different. And I even ask guys, I challenge old TSR guys, well, tell me how it's not the same. Well, they got more hit points. It's a superhero game. Like, but it's more to the gameplay you're already doing. But what's the big difference, dude? They wouldn't know. See, here's the thing. A lot of guys will shit on third edition. If you ask them, why is it different? They can't even explain it to you. At the very least, here's where third edition guys appreciated me. I could say I didn't like third edition, but then I could tell you in detail my issue with it. So I wasn't talking out of my ass. And guys respected that I actually had a fucking explanation, like I just gave you there. Where other guys would shit on the WOTC games, that would be so stupid. I'd be like, well, why? Because it's a superhero game. Oh, no, they can die. It's that. But there was a little bit more protection. There was a little bit more softer. But I mean, it almost made sense too. If you're going to go to action, there's nothing wrong with characters being okay. Where are some broken elements? Yeah, but that I'm talking not now about TSR criticism. The most broken elements I seen were character creation, and that had to do with players that played third edition telling me this. So the criticism for broken character creation and being able to change around the stats and how that worked, players for third edition would tell you that. DMs for third edition would tell you that. That's not a TSR attack on that. They even said, yeah, the game is broken all over the place. And this is where you get here the criticism. Well, they're playing Munchkin characters. And my only critique on that was, you shouldn't blame the player for the options they have. That's one thing I would never do. If I had an old school game where I thought that breaks the game, I'd host rule it out. I would never leave it open to you, because I always thought the responsibility for the game overall was me, the game master. And if it's an option for the player, I never blame the player for the option. So if they're going, oh, I do this and I have a stronger character, I'll be like, the game should be made for that. And the game is not made for that, or if the game master is allowing that option, you can't criticize the player. You either criticize the game or the guy allowing it. But any option a player has, the game should be made for. And the second you say, well, I'm going to criticize the player, well, then you're taking, basically the blame should be on the game master and the game, but instead it's falsely being put on the player. And that's so people could avoid blame. I'm like, no, DM, if you allow that in your game, that's on you 100% and only you. That's it. If it breaks the game, don't let that in. And you, the game master, not the player doesn't have the authority. The game master does. You have the authority to say that isn't allowed. So if that is game breaking, that's on you to fix. That's on you to adjust, not the player. See, anything a player would take, the game should be able to handle it. So I never got mad at any player in an old school game for ever taking take the best options. Even if I think, hey, be more creative to do this, doesn't matter. The game should be made for the options. That was always a principle I had. And if I felt the options would hurt the game or something, right away, I would host rule that out. Like there are certain kits. I like kits from the Splat books. I would tell people, yeah, you can use the kits. They'd be like, well, okay, all of them. Like, nope. Several of them I cut off because I found them to be game breaking. I never blamed a player. I never let one of the game breaking kits in and go, player, that's your fault for taking it. what kind of fucking shit is that? That's bullshit. No, it's I'm responsible, so I make sure the kit doesn't go into the game. Anything optional for a player should, if the game's not made for it, they shouldn't be playing it. And if you want a certain type of group or certain type of experience, host rule the fucking damn thing out. You can't be looking at a player going, well, all these guys are making these types of characters, but here you are making this one. No. You host rule that out. That's your responsibility, DM, not the players. So if they take an option that's there, that's completely on that the game should be made for that, or the game you intend to run, you should be limiting. Don't let that in. Now, WotC would tell you say yes to everything, but I'm like, then what? You say yes and then you curse the player out for taking the option? So I always criticize the WotC side of games where they I would see broken things, and WotC guys always blame the fucking players. And I was like, no, dude, no, that's completely wrong. You have to fucking take the heat on that. Have to. I've never seen that in old school. It was never the player's responsibility. That was a completely new thing with WotC. That was pure WotC. That was WotC edition blame game on players. When I heard the Munchkin thing, I was like, what's that criticism? They're like, well, yeah, that player is playing with the most extreme stuff. Wait. Did the DM allow it? Yeah. Well, then fucking DM is responsible, not the player. And that, to me, because the DM has the authority, not the player. The player doesn't have the fucking authority over anything in the game, right? I remember a quote from someone who once told me, have your munchkins, and no one else can be a munchkins. To me, the game should just be made for whatever option you're putting in, and the game should be able to handle it. It's always the way I was. I just never had the attitude. I don't look. If you rolled a bunch of 18s for a character for D&D and the other guys are all weak, I don't give a fuck. And it might be a rare case where you do 3 dice, and I've seen this. I actually seen where one night I did some pretty hardcore stat rolling where it was just the 3 dice, not the 4 dice. I do the 4 dice sometimes. 4 drop the lowest, right? But some nights I do the 3. I remember one year, because after doing thousands of sessions or thousands, of players, this is just going to happen. Sooner or later, the math is going to happen. Where one night after shitloads of this doing this, you're going to get this retarded night. And the guy rolled, I'm not kidding you, with 3 D6s, not too many rolls, 4 18s. And he was like, man, I'm going to play a very powerful character. I'm like, yeah, the game's made for it. And guess what? The game was. I represent the lollipop guild. I never had an issue, and the game handled the 418 character no problem. Like, it was just no issue. But that's the difference. The game was made for it. So when I would look over at WotC games, I'd be like, if that character is breaking your game, DM, stop putting what the blame is on you, not on the player. Stop falsely putting it on the player. Like, if the player has that character, that's your fault, DM, not the player's fault. Period. If that character is a problem, you, DM, are responsible for that, not the player. If that is breaking your game, DM, again, you are responsible, not the player. So I thought that was the most pathetic thing. And that was my harsh, because I criticize openly old school. Remember, I do this, Miles. I'm fair on both sides. I take my shots at both sides. I call out both sides. And I've called out TSR at the start of this, so it's not like I didn't put some hammer down the TSR side of things. For quite a bit of time here. But on the WotC side, that's one thing I really frowned upon. I was like, I thought that was one of the dirtiest things ever, because it was like, okay, is that the DM who is responsible for that, is he trying to blame the player? No. Stop right there, WotC DM. No, don't you fucking do that. Stop using that term to describe the player. You are responsible, not the player. Period. End of fucking story. And if you don't want the player playing that character, you have the authority to control that, not the player. So if you let it, you let it. And that also tells you there's a broken element of the game. And there was nothing wrong to say that. 3rd edition had a broken game. But no game was perfect. There was broken elements of every game. See, in the old school, especially with 2nd edition, we didn't argue that every game was perfect. Every game had a broken element, even second edition. We never whined about it or tried to deny it. We accepted it, but what we did was we had the authority to change it. So I'd always look at third edition like, man, I'm not trying to attack your game, third edition guys. But if you have broken characters, that's a broken game. And if you have a broken game, you have to host rule. That's the point of you fix it, you adjust. That's it. You can't do it raw. Raw is broken. Raw AD&D 1E was broken. Every fucking raw, element overall is broken in some way. You can't get around that. You fix it. You don't complain about the fact that you don't have a perfect game. There's no Traveler has issues. Cyberpunk has issues. Rollmaster has fucking issues. Every game has some fucking issues. You'd have to game test for fucking decades to try to avoid most issues. There was no company that was going to be able to game test. So what did I call us? Companies would put together the best game they could. Then they put it out, and I would tell every player that I ever met, think of us as permanent game testers. Like, we're not just people playing the game, we're permanent game testers, right? So when we find a flaw, it's okay to fix it. One of the biggest regrets, someone telling me why Plenty of Books was bad because it was a crunchy, which paused me away or pushed me away from it some years until I realized it was crunchiness I loved. There's nothing wrong with Plenium. Well, look, here's my critique on Plenium. I think I covered the TSR versus WOTC stuff good enough. I've given you my take. There's not like a big attack I have on either side. It was just, this was the difference. And now you see it's a mind game versus a dice game. When you put perception into it, it changes the mind thing. That's where they say it's player skill versus character skill. And this is where you get the opinion. These are the details that make it that, right? Oh, yeah. Yeah. I hope to get the next update out on probably like late summer, shit like that, right? And I got some new stuff I'm working on to go with it as well. So, yeah, totally. But let's see, get to Plenium. Here's what my only weirded out part of Plenium. Heroes Unlimited, I fucking love. But it felt like a game that sort of went backwards going forwards. Like, if you go back to the earlier version of Plenium, especially with the Heroes Unlimited that I played, it works really well. Like, really fucking works pretty fucking mint. The further ahead you go with the game, the more it starts to crack. This is a personal opinion, mind you. It's a personal opinion. But the further you go ahead with Plenium, it felt like it went backwards. Like, forwards was backwards. Now, I'm not saying that, like, you could take some things in. Like, I understood robot damage, the major damage. Not currently. I got so many things I say. I want to do a stream on the game. So I do want to hold back and not talk about it now, but I will. So we'll get there at one point for sure. I will be doing a stream on it, probably close. I would hope to, but like a month before I put it out. So do a stream and talk about the updates then. But some of the middle of things and testing things that anything I'm doing right now is, it's a mix of stone and not stone stuff. And I don't want to say anything and put pressure on myself to have anything a certain way, because I'm experimenting with a lot of shit right now. So I want to make sure that when I go to finally talk about it cleanly, what I say has some legitimacy. Like, what I say is what you're going to see in the update, right? So that's really important to me. So big update, and I'm going to do some extra content to go with it. So it's not just the main PDF I'm working on, but the main content. The other thing I'm trying to work on to get it complete is where you can print it. Right? I have it in PDF form right now, but I want to get it to the stage where it can be printed. And that's a major thing. I'm trying to get that right. It's taken a bit to learn, but I hope to have that. But yeah, I'd say, I'd like to do a stream on it sometime, to not be too late, say by the end of June. Right? Heroes Unlimited is a Plenium game. It's an early Plenium game. Plenium, I know you've heard of Plenium, Miles. I would assume you've at least heard of Plenium, like Robotech Plenium, stuff like that. Heroes Unlimited is Plenium had a variety of games to put out. And one of the early games I put out was Heroes Unlimited. And it was like, think about a Heroes game, but not like Superman, that more like realistic street level heroes, right? It wasn't like Superman and Batman. It was like you make your hero up. It was realistic. You could play it. The heroes could get their asses kicked. They weren't just perfect fucking people. So it was a really playable game for a hero game. And I loved it. And it really shows off the Plendium system when it worked. For all the criticism I've heard about the Plendium system from other people, I'm like, no, go play Heroes Unlimited. That fucking works well. What people I think have a hard time understanding, especially later on, some of the rules change I don't like, but the damage stuff I sort of understood with the robots, right? Was the original mechanoids. Well, then you probably know some of what I'm talking about, right? But yeah, I didn't like some of the later changes. I liked the early Plendium rules, and I felt like they were peak. I wanted to see them improved, not the other way around. And I felt like the further they went ahead, instead of improving, they went away from it. And it's like, I go back and play Heroes Unlimited, that feels like a clean game. And I like Plendium. I do like it. I like Robotech, but the damage thing was a little weird, but it made sense to me at the same time. And I covered mega damage there. You know, mega damage equals out to a lot, but it makes sense when you think you're not going to shoot a pistol at a tank and all this type. I explained it really well. But yeah, wasn't a big fan of everything to do with. I like Plendium was good at this. When they do a game, their research, their information on this stuff was awesome. Like if you did a Robotech game right now, you'd have to borrow Robotech stuff from Plendium. There's no way around it. Because Plendium, I don't know how he got this deal. He went right straight to the fucking guys that made the stuff in Japan and got everything. Now, you can't get more than what they got for it, right? He got everything. So that was pretty good. It makes it attractive, but a lot of people still sour at Robotech because it's like as attractive as it is, it's not a game that held up too well. Heroes Unlimited, though, actually has it still has a cult following. Like it played out pretty well. And for people that criticize Plendium, I'm like, Heroes Unlimited will break you of that. It will surprise you and go, oh wait, shit, this isn't bad. Yeah, man, this works. Heroes Unlimited fucking works. It is my personal favorite superhero game. I like what I learned from DC Heroes and Villains and Vigilantes. Really managing the spotlight better and understanding how to make characters important in a certain way. Just learning from doing that, right? Like it was a minor thing. You spotlight in other games, but at DC Heroes and Villains and Vigilantes makes you forcefully have to spotlight all the time because of the types of characters that are in the game. And you got to do a spotlight or make a scene where vastly different characters are equally important to a degree. And so how do you do that? How do you make scenes where Batman and Superman are equally important to the scene, even though one is super strong and one is just somebody who might be better at investigations, right? Oh, yeah. Didn't do much on riffs. And as you know, Miles, now it doesn't mean I'm not going to, but you know my principle here. I had that principle rule of I have to have played it or ran it to cover it. And I think a lot of my fellow nerds appreciate that about my coverage on games is I don't pretend or I don't see some of them don't mind this. Guys will go read about a game they've never played or ran, and they'll put the text up and read it and give you their opinions. Some nerds are completely fine with it. Some nerds get really picky about that. They're like, well, if you haven't played it or ran it, you shouldn't be talking about it. You should not be giving me some review or some take on it. I somewhat agree with that principle. So my rule is, and this is why I'm purposely doing stuff behind the scenes, is I have to have either played it or ran it to do something. Like Fudge right now for Craig, I'm actually going to have someone run me through it who has some really great wisdom on game mastering stuff. So when I do the how to run it part, I'm going to understand it, but I'm going to play it so I have direct experience with, the game master. And then the game master is going to teach me stuff he normally would never walk a player through, but he knows why he's doing it for me, right? Like we're doing it so I can learn. So usually he would just have his players, and he wouldn't tell players how he game masters. He would just do his gimmick, and they would play the game. He's purposely going to teach me this shit, right? What's the Cruncher Superhero System champions? What's the Cruncher Superhero System champions? Which system would you fit world based on Amazon Prime show? The Boys. Champions. I would definitely say that would be something, or maybe Villains and Vigilantes to a degree, right? Depending on how you look at it, right? Because there's so many different characters, weaker to stronger, and they spotlight them pretty well for a show. Think about the spotlighting you see in Boys and the variations in characters. The spotlighting effect is the Villains and Vigilante and DC Heroes thing, but you don't want to say it's DC Heroes, but the spotlighting and the difference between powers is really important. So I would say more Villains and Vigilantes is up the realm properly. It's not champions. I'll go to B&B. I'll go to that. That reminds me more of Boys. If you think of the spotlighting way they do the show and the variations between the powers, 100% easy. That'd be the easiest one to compare to because they're doing a show, and so what do they have to do for the show? They have to make weaker characters as important as the stronger ones. So you have the guy who can fly through the fucking building like Superman, but you still got to make the other characters credible in what they're doing. And then you got to spotlight that properly in each scene. The Boys actually do a pretty good job, but now this is a nerd area where you're asking me my opinion. I'm sure there's some guys out there that won't agree with me at all. So, but on the spotlighting effect, they do a pretty good job. So I don't know how you would feel about that, Bob. If you played Villains and Vigilantes, you get what I'm saying with the spotlighting effect. And I find the Boys do a pretty good job on that. Heroes games are pretty similar in some ways. I mean, they're just variations in powers, but DC Heroes and B&V are closer to each other than the other, to a degree, the other games. But the spotlighting effect and the variations in powers is more, it's actually less DC Heroes and more V&V. Like the DC Heroes is what it is. Pretty straightforward with some randomness. V&V is extremely random and does spotlighting really well. And it's what you have to do. There's no way, like, if you make, thank you, Bob. If you made the other characters useless compared to the strong guy, without the spotlighting and finding important things for them to do, you're killing the show. Because I would imagine you would agree, Bob, if you watch those shows is for you to take the other characters serious that are weaker than some of the other characters, they have to have things that they're doing that make them credible to you. And then there's the spread out of spotlighting, so you can't have it all on one character. That's pretty straightforward villains and vigilantes right there. It's straightforward balance between power and weak, but making the weaker characters credible. The way they're sneaky with their politics, the way they set things up, right? So, and you see them be effective against stronger characters. Like, how could the Boys even take on Mr. Superhero if they didn't have some gimmicks or some cleverness in what they're doing? So you get to see the spotlight properly, and then you get to see how they can balance off just through other information and ideas. Yeah, so the Boys is V&V right there. But yeah, there. I if you would agree with that, that's pretty much it. There's only so many superhero games too, so V&V covers quite a bit. But if you had a show where the spotlighting isn't that well, like, I don't know, I've seen the Batman versus Superman gimmick. I didn't like that for the movie. I didn't mind how they did it, but the fight between them, it's like I don't know. I think they did a little better on the spotlighting. The more DC hero stuff is when they did the movie where Batman was sort of the leader of the group and they had to bring Superman back to life. That was different. Without the Superman versus Batman thing, now you're getting more DC heroes properly, where weaker characters and other characters are important. You're getting spotlight time more properly done. There you go. But that's the gimmick I learned from doing V&V and DC heroes is spotlighting. So I take that back to D&D, where now it doesn't matter what the situation is. In all situations, every character can be important. And it's how do you find the importance? How do you spotlight them? How do you set up situations where I don't want to have just all fighting and then only the fighter is focused on? right? Like only he's effective in those scenes, say, compared to some of the other characters. I made sure even during the fights that there's other things going on. I start realizing the value of making sure there's, even if there's combat or something like that, that there's more than just that happening. So, you know what I mean? There's potential other things the other characters could do that are just as effective, right? That was the spotlighting thing. Very important. I took that to other games too. Spotlighting was helpful for, in a way, it set me up for Cyberpunk, which is Philo talks about quite often. Um, Cyberpunk is really a game where it's a bit of spotlighting because you got to sit there and bring 70 to 80% of your scenes, unlike Traveler. The pressure's on the game master to get players to play their characters right. But that means you've got to make sure each different character in a scene, in one scene, has something to do, even though the characters are different from one another, right? 1 second. 1 moment. Okay, sorry. But yeah, Cyberpunk is a lot different than Traveler. Traveler, you can freely let the players do what they want with their characters. It's really more responsibility of the players to play their characters to who they are. You hope they do. But in Cyberpunk, the designer wants you to have the characters really play, or the players really play the characters to who they are, but they don't want to just depend on the players. So the designer says a lot of it's on you too, game master, the person running it. So you got to pressure players into playing their characters through the scenes. Now, it doesn't mean you don't have like 30% of scenes. You can be a little loose, but 70% of the scenes, if you run the game correctly, the way the designer wants, mind you, you should take a scene where there's 4 different types of characters, and somehow that scene has to have things that are going to push all 4 different characters and their own different abilities to do those things. So scenes can become complicated, and you are to plan scenes out. It even drills on you planning the scenes out, right? Playing at a game with 2 names, Night Spawn, which would quickly be renamed to Night Bane because of lawsuits, right? Yep, I've heard about this. Tom McFarlane, because of his Spawn character. One of my favorite characters, though. Totally understand why that would be a big issue. That was a big hit at the time. Spawn was a big hit. That's I sort of get it. I totally get it. Night Spawn to Night Bane. Yeah. And I don't know, was the way I would look at it is like people were like that back then. TSR was like that too. Everybody was like that. There was the family, a Tokens family, that were going after TSR for using Hobbit. TSR went after people. Everybody went after everybody for using anything that was slightly out of bounds. I remember WWF, right? They had the Foundation going after them all the time. Everybody sued everybody back then. I'm not surprised at all. Spawn, though, a very popular character. The boys, I like the first 2 seasons. They're talking to Bob for a second. I didn't like anything after that. Just died on me. And I hate, there was one part of the show I didn't like. You know, I'm not a religious person, but they kept really, I don't like when they drill in something. This happened to me when I watched Westworld. I didn't like the way they talked in Westworld. I didn't like how they pronounced curse words. They were always like, it was almost like every character had to say a curse word in a very straightforward, weird way that never made sense to me. Like I watched the first bit of second season, used hobbits for a long time. They got away with it for a long time. You're right. But I didn't like certain things, certain elements. Like I don't like in Westworld the way they pronounce curse words. They would, if you go back and watch it, you'll know exactly what I mean. I'll put that seed in your head. Go back and watch season 1 of Westworld and just pay attention to how they say curse words. And it's meant to be really strong. I don't know exactly the whole story. I never watched all the way through Westworld, so there might be secrets to Westworld as to why they had the pronunciation that way. but it was so raunchy and overkill that I didn't like how they did that. And my issue with the boys was you could tell the writers, and I hate when writers give themselves away. I hate when you give yourself away. I like a good story, like a. So this is not to be religious or anti-religious, but recently I said I wouldn't consider myself an atheist anymore. I'd be in the agnostic zone right now. I'm not making any claim beyond that, but for a long time I've always considered myself an atheist. And when it comes to Christian movies, I'd always hate when I felt like they represented me poorly. So I really like the movie, they call it The Right. And The Right, it's a pro-Christian movie. It's pro-Christian, but what I like is when you first meet the main character at the start of it, he's an atheist, but this is how good the writer is. He represents an atheist for what an atheist would be. Like, even though it's a pro-Christian movie, he doesn't bother painting a false picture to make a point. And that's what makes the movie fucking strong. And even though at the end it's all pro-Christian, I'm totally into the movie. I even love the last bit, even though at the time I considered myself a complete non-believer. In that aspect, I didn't care. I felt The Right was a fucking beautiful movie. Because on all sides, the writer didn't have some weird take. When it comes to the boys, I hate when a writer gives themselves away or somebody producing it, where they're showing you a false version of Christians. Now, I'm not even a Christian, but this is how honest I am, right? Like, if you're going to show me Christians, I know what a Christian is. I'm not a bullshitter. So if you show me some guys, or you're trying to show me writing like, oh, Christian wouldn't talk that way. Like, you're sort of there, but I know you don't like this group of people. And you're making it too obvious in your writing. Like, don't give that away. That's what I liked about The Right. When you open up and you meet the main character of the movie, there's not a personal attack on somebody for what they believe. It's just represented correctly and honestly. Like, there's no agenda that fucks the storytelling up. So, and that makes, when the character switches over, that makes it even more credible for the storytelling. When the character at the end goes from atheist to believer, it's a powerful moment because it's way more believable, way more solid on. I hate on either side, on anybody, if you're representing somebody and you have a writer that has a bias in their mind and they cannot leave the biased thinking out of their writing. So that's an issue for me. I don't like stories where the biased, right, is in what I'm seeing. Westworld was another thing. I still, to this day, I don't get why they were so raunchy with the way they would have every character curse. The pronunciation of curse words seem weird. And I don't like everything being dark in every fucking scene. I thought that was stupid. They did the Westworld stuff. I'm like, you go to the cowboy stuff. It just has this dark edge to it that just seems unnecessary at certain parts where I'm like, I get there's going to be some of that, but I want to see some of the interesting shit you're pitching to me here. Nope. Dark edge. I don't like it. I don't like the raunchy way of pronunciation of curse words because it was all characters were doing it. And if you go back and watch the season 1 of Westworld, you'll all notice it now that I told you this. You might have not noticed it before. You'll notice it now. I guarantee it. I plant the seed in your head. Just pay attention to every time every fucking person curses in the show. And you're going to notice that it's not normal. It's not how people would just curse in life. It is an overkill on pronunciation of curse words. And it was so off-putting because I noticed it right away where I'm like, why the fuck are they talking like that? It was weird. It was just, I noticed it almost instantly. And then it stuck out to me the whole time. I was like, at the end of the season, I was just like, I watched the first season, but I was like, this fucking sucks. I didn't like Westworld. And I watched a little bit of the second season, but I'm like, I didn't like it. The concept seemed interesting. So that's why I sort of got into season 1 because some of the early concepts seem interesting, but when they started to the cursing, I thought that was weird. Weird way to speak. It wasn't like normal talk. And every character is doing this. Now, I figured there might have been a secret to the show or something, or some secret in the story as to why they're pronouncing curse words this way. I had no fucking clue. To this day, I have no clue if there was a reason for it, because the later stuff, I checked out a review by the Critical Drinker on the later seasons, and from what he showed me, I didn't bother going to watch any of it because it just looked like absolute trash. And it started getting into the politics again, where I'm like, okay, we're going to go to bias thinking. It's again, as I like storytellers that just put biased thinking away so you get a good story. You can't get a good character if the character isn't realistic. That's just the truth. I always said that, like, there'd be so many other, that was, again, go back to the right. It was a great Christian movie because the character that starts off as an atheist is written well as an atheist. Me too. I'm the same way. That's why I'm talking about old shit, right? I'm not talking about like Boys. I watched the first season or two. Couldn't get into it. The Walking Dead, I watched the first 3 seasons and then just went, couldn't watch no more. Same, yeah, exactly. Same thing with Star Trek and the Picard thing. I felt I tried to watch the first few episodes of that and it was like, the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? Not Star Trek. It's not like anything. But mainly, I watched a little bit of Kirk. My 2 lead-ins were Next Generation, and then unlike some other people, I love DS9 because I watched DS9 multiple times, the entire thing. DS9, I love Picard and Star Trek, The Next Generation. Don't get me wrong, I do. I love the show. But I have to say, if you ask me what was my favorite Star Trek, DS9, and only because I like the war. I like the sort of campaign storytelling. That if I was going to make Star Trek a game, I would go with DS9. Like, forget every other one. I would go with DS9. That would be the show I would base the game on right there. Most movies or TV shows now are remakes or better originals. And most of the time, not even better originals. Or no, yeah, well, sorry. The originals are better than the remakes. Sorry. If that's what you mean. Our remakes, well, that's just because there's no creativity. They hired people in there that have agendas and shit like this, not creative people. And then the creativity they want to do, as the Critical Drinker would say, the message. And we all know what that means. And it just means, let's be honest, a lot of their ideas wouldn't initially sell. So they take an idea that already sells. And sometimes what's even cursed, I hate them for doing this to you. They would give you the first season that would be neutral. That's to draw an audience. And that first season would be great. You watch it and you're like, yeah, second season, the message. It goes back to the right movie. I just don't want your shit in the show. That's all. And I don't mind if it's naturally cultural. Like, it makes sense. I don't even mind if you have characters in there that represent a different mindset. Because if you go back to Star Trek, they would say, well, it's like that. No, Star Trek wasn't like that. Here's the thing. The episode for a Star Trek show wouldn't tell you what to believe. The overall story wouldn't tell you what to believe. But did they have characters of every different opinion and mindset there was? Yes. That's the difference. Like, now you watch a new Star Trek, the episode is telling you what to believe. Like, there's a greater push on the message to your mind, where if you go watch the Star Trek episode, it's more like, we leave it up to you. Here's some opinions from the variety of different characters. There might be a liberal character, a conservative character, this character. There might be some diverse. There might be all this stuff that you see, but nothing was hammered over your head. And when you go to the new Star Trek, the episode is telling you what to think. Now, instead of a character having an opinion throughout the show, everyone acts as this thing is true. Instead of just like, this guy believes it's true. No, the episode is drilling on you that this is what to believe. I'm like, okay, that's not Star Trek. That is not. If you say that's the same, you don't understand Star Trek. Old Star Trek was, it leaves it up to you. It has characters that will represent certain things, but the show overall isn't pretending that everybody believes this one thing. It will have the characters that believe it and the characters that don't. The Japanese Planet of the Apes, Suru no Gundam 1974, worth it just for the FX and soundtrack. people forget there was a lot of good things in Japan. The Godzilla stuff. If you're a real nerd and you're into Godzilla, I like Power Rangers, a bit of it, just because I like the Godzilla stuff. People are like, "Oh, but you were in the Power Rangers." If you're a Godzilla fan and you liked a lot of that stuff they were doing, some of the guys that worked on Power Rangers, like that did that stuff that you see the big monster fights, they were guys from that industry, and they were some of the top guys. Like some of those suits fights are fucking beautiful. Like every episode or every story. Nah, not really. But I mean, like I definitely watched for that end fight to see what the monster was or something. I love old Godzilla stuff. So their effects were pretty good. I like old effect shows, period. I like old stuff. I like the old vampire movies, Dracula, Frankenstein, Kamen Rider. Yeah, oh, fucking awesome. Yes, 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 yes. I like old shit, grew up on it. And it just got to a point where we had it on TV every night. So I'd watch all kinds of it. Japan's cool. Wish real people could do heat moves with visible flame horse. Nowadays, they actually do some amazing things. Here's what I like about Japan. You'll see everyone doing graphics and AI stuff. But yet, go watch some Japanese guys on X, and you'll see a guy who's made a sword that flames up, and it's not graphics. It's like they still do like stuff in a way that a lot of other people in other places are not doing. There's even one guy I watch a channel sometime, YouTube channel. I wish I could remember his fucking name off the top. Maybe I'll post it later. But he purposely works with metal. He has a popular YouTube channel. And the guy works with no graphics. He just makes everything. The guy is definitely a metalworking guy. And if I showed you his video channel, some of you probably know who he is. I just can't remember the fucking name of the guy. But he makes everything. Like they're still into real effects. And they still use some of that stuff for their fucking shows over there. So if you think everyone's using CGI, not everyone is using CGI. There's stuff going on in Japan that you should really drill into, because there's stuff over there. They're still doing stuff we would appreciate from like old 80s stuff, right? Last movie I watched was Norwegian movie Butcher about the battle between Oscar Borg's fortress and the German cruiser 1940. One of the last like recent movies I watched, because I barely watch anything. Trying to think. I mean, that I seriously watched. It's hard to even fucking remember, to be honest, because it's vague. I don't watch too many things. I watch clips of a lot of movies and that. Not surprised. The Norway guys would know the same movie. They really are creative like that. Wish I could afford to go visit there. Japan saying, yes, and they're still doing stuff we would love as nerds. Like not CGI stuff. They're still doing stuff in their shows. Like not saying they don't use CGI, but they still do. Like go watch that show they even did. Even in Korea, some of the Korean stuff, they still do some of the real shit. It's fucking awesome. Spider-Man is a real gem. Didn't even know they fucking did that. Norway really made World War II movies, including The King Snow. I did watch a movie. I just can't remember the name of it. It's actually a foreign movie where it is. I think it's German soldiers that are in it. The guy deals with them. Might even be in Norway. I'm not even joking with you, Black Rose and Philo. I wish I could remember. It's this old guy. And it's recent. I know it's in the last so many years. And they're fucking with him. And this old guy, they don't expect to be able to do shit to him. It's an old. I think it's either a German or a Norwegian or something. I don't remember the language too well. I just remember watching the subs, and they speak some English though. There's a lot of English spoken in the movie, and it's meant to. They purposely did some English because I know they wanted a wider audience. Michael Pruitt was good in train journey documentary in Japan. He is currently in South Korea. That was Kung Stu and German guy. But yeah, the last movie I actually watched start to finish. I just can't remember the name, but I'll have to get the name of it later. But it's just old guy where they start fucking with him and they don't know this guy is like a killer. I say fucking an old guy, fucking with an old guy, fucking with an old guy. And he's brutal. He fucking kills all these fucking soldiers that are fucking with him, right? Battle between Oscar Fortress and Butcher. I admit to you guys, I did watch the South Korean show, but I only watched season 1. I didn't watch season 2. The competition show. The competition show where Buddy lives at the end. See, I'm no good with fucking names sometimes on the spot like that. It's. I know you guys all know it's South Korean show. It's they had a season 2. It was the main guy ended up being in some Disney Star Wars TV show, and I never watched anything Disney anymore ever. Hey, I don't know. I got weirded out by Disney many years ago when I heard about all the kid shit they were doing. That's a Finnish movie called Shinu or something. I think that's exactly what. Yeah, I think Black Rose is probably right. I want to know how I found it. It wasn't me that even found it. It was Midnight's Edge. Midnight's Edge. That's a Norwegian guy that has a Midnight's Edge. He pitched the movie, and I went and found the movie right away. I just don't fucking remember I couldn't remember the name, but I went and watched it because he did a review on it, and it's like, this is a fucking awesome movie. I was thinking of watching the North something he had pitched recently, but I haven't checked that out. The North something. Do it Vikings. But Viking history is so fucking vague that it's sort of shit, right? I watch a lot of Lex Friedman. Squid Games, Monkey, you got it. That's the show I watched start to finish, season 1. I don't watch many TV shows or movies anymore. I watch a lot of Lex Friedman. Lex Friedman is one of my favorite guys for the specific people he has on, like the one he did about like the guy who came in and did like the history of Rome, Genghis Khan, stuff like that. Like Lex Friedman's coverage is some of my favorite stuff. If you guys don't watch Lex Friedman, I'm not saying every guest is going to hit it out of the park with you, but like the guy who did the Roman coverage and all that, fucking beautiful. The guy who did the Viking bit, though, it's sort of disappointing because as much as we would love to know about Vikings to be able to say this is what Vikings were, most everything we know about Vikings comes from not Vikings. And a lot of it is so vague that you can't verify like 80 to 90% of the so-called claims of the Vikings. Like, it's hard to verify most things about Vikings. Like, they definitely existed, and there's crazy stuff about them that's true, and there's 20% that you can verify that's fucking crazy about them. But there's a lot of like finer details that it's like even that Viking show. A lot of that it's accurate in a way that the names existed, but if you said, did all these characters exist at the same? No. I would say if you're going to watch anything Viking, there's an anime out there. I actually watched a Japanese anime, ironically, about Vikings, Vinland. Oh, I did watch that. Vinland, the anime. If you guys watch a little bit of anime, Vinland is fucking beautiful. I watch every season of that. Last season is weird, but the first 2 seasons are fucking amazing. Vinland, if you want to know anything about Vikings. Guy did it was a very honest take. Lex Friedman brought this guy on, but what you find out is it's hard to tell if you were to try to tell a story about Vikings and have it be all accurate. It's going to be pretty shitty. I read the Vinland Saga. The anime they do for it hits it out of the park. Sometimes I get it. It's not every show is going to nail exactly what a manga does, because some of the mangas are fucking great. I won't lie to you. I would agree with anybody who says there's a lot of mangas out there where the manga is fucking better than the anime, given how they do the anime compared to the manga. Like, the manga does this. I get it. I've read some manga. I personally think the anime for Vinland is fucking nailed. Vinland is, if you believe the story, is a part of like Newfoundland, Canada. It's just, I guess when they got here, they just didn't roam in farther into Canada. So they miss so much. Like they give up on the place at one point because they just don't roam far enough into Canada to find out, okay, there's better shit down the line. They only get so far and they go, okay, not really good enough. We got to go. It's like, no, dude, just a little further, little further, little further. You're in. Like it's really good if you go a little further. No, they did do a lot of things wrong. At least they were honest about it. And the guy that was on the Lex Friedman thing, he says exactly some of the details that are completely wrong. Like some characters can't exist at the same time other characters do. But the show is a little unforgiving about that. They're just like, fuck it. We're going to just go with this because it's more about just trying to represent certain characters. Try to represent the characters as they were. That the guy does agree with that. He's not saying they get the characters wrong, but some characters shouldn't even exist at the same time as other characters because they shouldn't even be alive at the same time as each other, right? Vinland doesn't try to have 50 million characters. And so I found Vinland was a little bit more accurate for this reason. It's because they only use a few characters and they try to line them up at least good. That I was waiting for them back then. It's one of my 9 lives. Would have ran a good fucking Viking game for them. No, they didn't go far enough into Canada. The Knights Templar did. They made it to Nova Scotia. Now, again, I think I told this story the other night, but that's only if you believe they made it to Nova Scotia. That's the rumor, is they escaped and came to Nova Scotia, Canada. And it was denied for years. And then a woman, she moves out to a place where the so-called Knights of the Templar would be. But there's no walls there. And if the Knights of the Templar, if the story is false, there should be no walls because there should be no buildings, no walls, no nothing. A woman bought a piece of land and she's taking up some of the land because she wants to do all this gardening. And part of the land she takes up, she finds a fucking wall. Like a man-made wall. She's like, what the fuck is this? Like a wall be like built up from dug into the ground. It took them about 3 months and the Freemasons purchased the land off of her for a shitload of money. And they built the building around it. And if you ask them, they completely deny there's a wall there. Yet we have the articles, the pictures. So the wall was there for real. They can't hide it, but they just deny it. And then there is a lake where the supposed stories, the Knights of the Templar took took one of the most holy things in the fucking world and hid it in a fucking lake. Now there's a lake near there that the military protects that supposedly has the Holy Grail. That's the rumor. Nobody knows why they protect the lake, but the military protects the lake. And you'll get warnings going up to that lake, the small lake. And if you try to go into the lake, they have legally have the right to shoot you. That's a real thing. Did the natives not build any ramparts or permanent stone buildings? Nope. That's why there's supposed to be no walls. And I know that's weird, Philo, but want to know why they were like that? They'd have to move all the time. So they didn't have. That's the way the natives were. The natives existed by moving. They moved, and that's why they had the teepees. All their buildings were stuff they could build, pick up, go, build, pick up, go. No walls, no nothing. It wasn't part of their structure, right? Just saying. Fun fact, though, about 5% of the Icelandic population had Native American blood, probably from the time back when Vinland was settled, miniature slaves. Oh, yeah, they did run to the Indians. They fought them and probably took their women and the whole nine. Lincolnshire, yeah, they changed the names. The Vikings were for 100 plus years, so maybe they needed a holiday. That's probably. I do know they had to escape, but the rumor is they came all the way to Nova Scotia. All the way to Nova Scotia, so they got here. Again, that's one story that sticks out to me because I was actually around. I was back home at the time they found the walls, and I was able to see the pictures and see the reports before they decided to deny the whole thing. Skraelinger. Natives were most likely, depending on the group they ran into, were a mix of cannibals and crazy people. Yep. It's not me being hateful towards natives. They just natives here at the time. Many of the groups were cannibals, and they were a little out there, and they'd be violent, so you'd have to fight them. And they probably attacked the Vikings. Probably a lot of times. I wouldn't doubt it. Probably a lot of scrapping between the Vikings and them. That's just how it was. How it was. And the stories are when Christopher Columbus first came, they had one Indian group come down that was a peaceful Indian group, and they were asking him to help protect them from the other Indians that wanted to eat them. Oh yeah, they were attacked by them, and they probably even picked some of the fights, right? But I know they were attacked by them. I know that story. That's a real thing. So yeah, probably had, like you say, native Indian blood mixed. Wouldn't doubt it. Probably brought some women or some kids back with them from Vinlia. Righteous ones. Yep. Well, you're going to do that with your enemy. They were like that with every enemy. If you think they just hated Indians, like anytime you would hear about Vikings talking about their enemies, it was never fucking good language. It was always weak, and they were like that with each other. Like the neighbor fucked around, you kill the neighbor. If you piss off too many fucking neighbors, they kick you out. I will consider there's probably things they left out. And for anyone else who has not watched the fucking anime for Vinland, yeah, definitely go fucking read that the saga. It's fucking beautiful. The last part, though, I don't know how much they did into the saga, but the last part was a little preachy on the violence. It was the artist, the storyteller. It's again a little bit of that bias comes into it at the end. That part I watched it to the end, but I was like, I don't know, dude. Do we need this? I like the Vinland story right up into that part, and I was like, I like most of the season. Most of the season for the last one was good. But the last part about peace and not violence, that was the storyteller biased pushing. I was like, was that really necessary, dude? Do we have to watch him get his ass kicked? I don't want to say too many details because I'll be giving stuff away, and I know that will be considered. That's considered not good. Not good. Okay, let's talk about what's coming up. I hope I was as nice as I could be to the TSR and WOTC people. I wasn't trying to say anything to stir up. I just really wanted to talk about the differences in a more honest way without the addition wars, because I find the conversations are so dishonest between the two groups that I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a coverage on it, but I want to talk honestly about it to the point of it's not an insult, but this is the difference. I actually understand the actual details to the differences, and this is how you can be reasonable and talk about it without blowing the fuck up, right? As you guys know, I'll say it again tonight because I look forward to this. So this weekend, covering 2 games, not sit-down talks, 2 games, gangbusters, and then I'm covering the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles RPG. Off script will be about guns and combat damage. And then on the 14th, I'll be doing Champions. Mentioned Champions to Bob tonight. Then on the weekend is going to be James Bond 007, and then Skyrealms of Darun on Sunday. Off script the next week is going to be Travel and Pacing. And then I'll be doing on the 20th my first members only stream, the Condor DM members only. And the next night I'll be doing 3 nights in a row there. I don't mind. I have all that planned, which is the anti-D&D one, which is not going to be about D&D. It's going to be about other games. It's an anti-D&D night. But with some of the views of the designers that were and wargamers that were deeply opposed to D&D. And then that weekend, people, it's going to be Top Secret on that weekend, Top Secret, and then Ghostbusters, the RPG. The off script is going to be that Tuesday. It's going to be modules and magic. So I'm going to be covering some modules, and then here's I know this is going to make I've already mentioned them already, but this is what's going to make Craig happy. So the last 3 days of the month that are scheduled before I put up a new schedule is, so it will be Paranoia, and this is the lineup, then Tune, and then GURPS. Hopefully that's going to be some good stuff right there. I hope the whole thing, I got a bunch of games coming up, so I hope you guys are really happy. Did a few of these sit-down nights and talked about some casual things, but I think everyone's going to be happy to get back into the games, right? I know you all are. Or at least that's usually the better reaction I get from most of these nights. Is the games. And that final lineup is no, I don't need to hear myself speak. It's always weird. Yeah, we want to know what I just wanted to get out some coverage and I totally agree. Yeah. Everybody talks about D&D, but at the same time, Philo, I hope you appreciate that I don't always talk about D&D. There's a lot, I mean, pretty much the vast majority of games I cover are not D&D, right? So I think I do a pretty good job on that. But I figure if I'm going to do any D&D coverage, because remember, I did the OD&D in basic, Advanced 1 is 2nd edition. Some nights it gets brought up after certain points, but I don't think that's a big issue at the end of the day. But yeah, with everyone else, every other content creator talking D&D all the time, I understand. I totally understand. If you're looking at everybody else and then getting back here and going, even Steven's doing D&D. I get you. I can appreciate that take. Resistance started with bunnies and burrows. But yeah, D&D is going to be anti-D&D. So that purposely is going to be other games and just stuff that is completely alternative to D&D on purpose. I'm not going to focus on D&D at all in any real sense. Our MERP, Traveler, Vampire, Cyberpunk, and more. I've learned a lot. I appreciate. I'm really glad you guys are taking a lot from that stuff because I really put a lot of time into it. And it's like, yeah, it's exactly what my personal experience was taking a lot from it just by doing that stuff. But yeah, I get tired of D&D too, and I just everyone else is doing it, and I figure, well, what's one thing that can set me apart? I fucking played and ran in like 50 fucking different games, and now what you guys don't know privately, I've done quite a few other games that I haven't mentioned yet, and there's a whole shitload of games. Like, I'll give you guys an idea of games that aren't even on the schedule yet. Just got to get up the right file. No, not that. I just gotta get the right one. Oh, this is it right here. So, let's see. So here are some games that will be coming up for sure. I'll just mention a few here now. Nostalgia so far, been loving it. Yes, so have I, man. Have to do all the work on this again. Just got me hyped last year. So games that aren't scheduled yet that are for sure coming up, and there's others going to be coming up, but this is a for sure lineup. Star Wars RPG 1987. Space 1989, but it's 1988. Or no, I think it's Space 1889, sorry. 1988. Ars Magica from 1989. Prince Valiant RPG, Torg, Dark Conspiracy from 1992, Over the Edge, Feng Shui, whatever, Deadlands, that's going to be good. Fading Suns, Legends of the Five Rings, and finally Trinity. Those games aren't scheduled yet, but I can guarantee you those games are coming up. I'll say them one more time. Star Wars RPG, Space 1889, Ars Magica, Prince Valiant, Torg, Dark Conspiracy, Over the Edge, Feng Shui, Deadlands, Fading Suns, Legend of the Five Rings, and Trinity. I'm trying to cover every game I played or ran, at least from the initial timeline was this on the start of all these streams was from 1970 right up to 2000. Now, of course, there's no game back in 1970. I just sort of set like a principle like this timeline, right? Oh, well, again, feel it's going to be more, but you'll hear about them, the details, promoting you, telling you how they're played, what the settings are, the whole nine. Last Letter to Father Christmas. Every one of them are fucking beautiful. And I know you're looking forward to the Toon one. You mentioned Toon to me so many times now, Craig, that I'm like, I realize that is it's a unique wait, but it's this month, so you're not waiting months for that one. That's coming, close to the end of this month. Around the time I go to do Toon, I'll finally be posting some of the new episodes, and the games there are pretty much most of what you're going to see coming out, right? I am going to free up the Horde Wars coverage I did, so I'm going to put that out to the public so they can hear it, right? Because it at least helps. It's a new game out, and it's just to help. It's good game mastering advice. Toon was great. Well, Monkey knows about it. Monkey might be there. I never played Prince Valiant, but it was the first time I saw Hal Foster's artwork. That's a beautiful fucking thing. That's a beautiful fucking thing. So I want to put Horde Wars out. So if anybody goes to buy Horde Wars, it has good game mastering advice, good character creation advice, and it tells you about the setting and how it lines up with the game. But it is an action game, guys. So I'm not trying to take a shot on that. But if you're into the action, if you're into some serious action, it's an action game. And it's going to give you the action. It's basically, imagine like just constant waves of fights coming at you. And it's a game where you're not really meant, I'll say this, I won't give too much away. It's not a game where you're meant to really survive, like to some goal end. It's more of a game of attrition. It's how long can you survive? That's it. It's like waves of fighting. And even victory is more like you want to fight, but it's like, okay, all right, that's that wave down. Victory doesn't feel like victory. So your wins just feel like a prolonging before the next wave. And you'll feel that, I guess. That's the way I sort of felt when I played it. You feel like you're like, okay, I'm like, okay, that group is down. All right, next one. And it's like a never-ending thing. So think of like never-ending action and how long can you last on the never-ending action. That's pretty much the game. So if you like action, you could turn your mind off and go play some Horde Wars. And I don't think I'm saying anything offensive. Like I'm not trying to, it's not a review. I don't think that's an attack on anyone. I'm not saying that in a bad way. I think I would assume DM Black Wall agrees with that concept or view that it is a bit of, this is not your deepest role-playing game. This is a bit of turn your mind off, go fight. Not turn your mind off, but on the aspect of character development and all that side of the game, like turn that off, go scrap. It might be appealing. Because it's all action, I think it would be appealing to more people than just the old school, but he does seem to only talk to people that seem to be hitting on the old school audience. I hope Miles, if you're around or you hear this later, go check out that. And I know you know some WOTC people. Go tell them about that game after I'm going to, actually, I'll even turn it over now. Just to get that done. But I think, Miles, you should definitely go tell some people about this game. Because I think I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I haven't seen any interviews from the guy where he has went and talked to what I would consider WOTC people, even though it's an action game that should be more appealing to more people than just the old school. I do see the old school guys talking about it, promoting it, but I'm like, hey, you're a WOTC guy. I know you know some WOTC people on here. Go pitch him that game, right? Because I don't know if he's had an interview and talked to some of those people. If he should, I think the game would appeal to more than just the small crowd of the old school. It's an action game. It's a bit of turn your mind off and go fight. And not in a bad way. It doesn't mean total. There's still the strategy of fighting and combat, but it's not like an old school game where you're avoiding the combat. No, the game is made for the fighting, obviously, right? So you go in, you just see how long you can last. And now the guys who have listened to it, I think if Craig and Black Rose listened to it, they'd agree, at least from my description, which is what was my experience. It is a sort of, don't plan on having a goal where you survive and win at the end. I don't think that's the way the game is meant to. It's just how long can you last before it's over. It's like fighting the Romans. Like imagine you're fucking Barbarossa fighting the Romans. You're like, okay, one wave down. We got them. They're going to surrender. Nope. Okay, there's another fucking wave coming. Okay. They're done, right? No. Another fucking army's coming. All right, we just killed another Roman army. That gotta be it, right? We got this one. No, they're fucking coming with another one. What the fuck are you talking about? They're coming with another one. Yeah, they're coming with another one. What the fuck? And by the time the Punic War 2 happens, the Straight War, he has to run back to Carthage, Barbarossa. He gets there, and because all his guys are fucking old and tired from all the fighting they did trying to take Rome, the new Roman army, which he's like, they get back to Carthage, he's like, they got a new fucking army? Yeah. How? This was the crazy thing about Rome. The way they had their system was, you can kill a massive amount, like a whole army, and they could just recruit one in a few weeks and get them up. And what was, I think the way they pulled it off was having a very basic fighting style. So you don't have to teach them 50 million things to turn them into a mercenary group and send them up again. And they would just hit you wave, and then you think you want, nope, wave again. Barbarossa goes to Carthage, where his guys are so fucking tired, he's old, and he gets defeated on the fucking battlefield, pretty much. Loses. And there goes Carthage, and there goes all the fucking work Barbarossa did to take Rome. And that victory is pretty much what settles Rome for the next whatever amount of time. That's how Rome sort of becomes Rome. Like a gauntlet of fire trying to fight the Carthage people. And if you look at the Carthage people, a bunch of them were fucking Baphomet believers. Which, if you understand that means Satan worshippers. Or Lucifer, the character of light, ends up somehow being tied to Baphomet. And Baphomet's like this thing. He's that guy. And if you go to Carthage, Baphomet is the god you sacrifice the kids to. And the more you harm the kids, the more valuable they are to the sacrifice. Yeah, Barca, Hannibal Barca. Sorry, I say Barbarossa. I'm saying, yeah, you're right. I don't know why I was saying that name. Hannibal Barca, you're right. 100% Philo, thank you for the correction. Barbarossa was the German guy, yes. But you know, the story's right. I just got the fucking name wrong. Hannibal. I should have been just saying Hannibal the whole time. That would have saved me the whole thing. I forgot, like, yes, Barca. Hannibal Barca. But yeah, that's where you find Baphomet, and that's where they tie Lucifer the light, strangely, to that being. And that's your Satan. Whatever you want to call it. Whenever you see Satanists, and that's Carthage, one of the main gods. And the more you make a child suffer, the more its energy. It's only because they realized there was a weird drug the Greeks first realized that there's a weird stimulation that if you do to kids, they let off a chemical in their body. And strangely, I guess you'd only know this from the shit you're doing to them. You torture them and you fucking go to eat one of them, and next thing you know, you're fucking high. That's what the Greeks figured out. Oh, yeah. I knew the story was correct. It was just the fucking name I got wrong. That's why I just want to tell anybody listening in. I brain fart on the fucking name at the end there. But yeah, Hannibal was exactly it. He was successful. He kicked their ass, but they just kept coming. And then he goes back, and what does him in is just he's just gotten old, and they stayed down there for so long. 60,000 Romans, they did not surrender, but the fucking bodies were laid out everywhere. There's some disgusting stories that come from the amount of death, and directly from him, the amount of death that he's seen there. But they just willed him out. That was it. We're entering the territory of Epstein here now. So Jeffrey was Carthagena. Just about. I have to mention that part. You can't really mention the Rome and the Carthage thing without mentioning Baphomet and the drugs. I usually don't talk about that stuff, but on these casual streams after so long, we're almost 3 hours. But it is 10:15. Okay, guys, you know the lineup. So we're getting back to games, right? We're going to be kicking ass. It's going to be fun. Let's have some fun, right? I hope you guys enjoyed tonight. I had a lot of fun. And yeah, I get the sick of D&D, but I think that establishes just some fucking... I don't have to say this shit again for a long time. Now people know my stance. Milo's still talking to me, I just have people here still talking to me that aren't going to fucking kill me over fucking WOTC. So there, my take is pretty soft on the WOTC stuff. Okay. I love you guys. Yes, of course, man. I love it. Boom. Everybody have a good night. Take care of yourselves. Philo, you too there. Good night, Zag. Have a good one. Hopefully we get some more people joining the D&D stuff, or the gaming stuff there, Zag. I hope that's going to happen soon. It is. It's hard to get around that. And at least all my takes I've covered every edition as far as old school. At least before I hit the new editions, boom, all the good stuff. Yes, all right.